morning, everybody. Very good morning to you. We are Newsroom. Yes, we're going to be with you until midday today. And we have lots to do. I'm with Elvis. Morning, Elvis.
Lots of stuff to discuss, Eben, but a very worrying trend. We're waiting for the 1st of April when social grants are supposed to be paid, and that's what we focus on this morning, because the Constitutional Court now wants an update on the social grant payment contract that CPS has got with SASA. And they're also asking the question what will happen on the 1st of April. So we're asking that question.
Yeah, we put it to you. Put it to you. Should the Constitutional Court approve the new SASA CPS contract? You guys are on it today. You're tweeting us already. So let's have a look what you guys are saying. I know it's something that many South Africans are very concerned about, Elvis.
Lachasa says, I wish that the Concord can approve the new CPS contract. Otherwise, most households will suffer and they'll be hungry. SASA is their hope, so says Lachasa.
Doc Moses Balani tweets us. He says, the court has no choice. There's 17 million lives at stake. They have to think about the people. The court has to think about the people.
Temba says, I wish that the Constitutional Court can approve the CPS contract.
Yeah, those are your tweets. Keep it coming, guys. Keep telling us what you think. Of course, we're also running a poll on probably the big story in the last 24 hours here in South Africa. We've seen a lot of governance issues, is what they call it, at the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, PRASA. Now, Elvis, yesterday, the whole board was dissolved by the minister.
Yes, the minister derailed the board. That's why we're asking you that question on our poll. Are you suspicious, perhaps, of the shenanigans that's happening at PRASA? So far, 83% of you from the 54 votes in are saying, yes, we are very suspicious. Only 17% says they haven't got any qualms with what's happening at SASA currently.
Yeah, you guys are tweeting us. Doc Moses Vilani comes to say, he says, yes, the same strategy they use of the SABC. A leak to the Sunday Times, and why politics is at play here to get PRASA inquiry, said Doc Moses.
Temba says, yes, I'm very suspicious. Hashtag PRASA, hashtag SABC News.
This one from Ikonanase says, yes, politics are at play and corruption is a victor, says Ikonanato. Keep tweeting us on that question. It's an interesting one that's playing out right in front of our eyes. But, of course, let's get into our work here. We are the Newsroom show. Let's bring you the news.
Social Development Minister Bartabile Dlamini has instructed her department and SASA to provide the necessary information as requested by the Constitutional Court. The Passenger Rail Agency Board Chairperson Popo Molefe says that he will legally challenge Transport Minister Dipuo Peters' decision to dissolve the PRASA board. And the airports company South Africa Access replaced the security guards who were on duty during Tuesday night's robbery at the OR Tambo International Airport as a precautionary measure. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
As if you don't know already, Elvis.
6-1, is it?
6-1 it is. It's been a fantastic night of sports. We also had some athletics out here in Bloemfontein, phenomenal stuff, but I'll be covering all of that a little later in the sports. And I do know that my colleagues will have lots to comment on and a whole lot of the sports stories that we've got today. Good morning to you. This is what we're bringing to you in the sports today.
A little bit of bounce again from Morkel. Williamson's running hard, hoping to get two, and he should get back safely.
Day two of the first test between New Zealand and South Africa, and the hosts are building a solid first innings in response to the Proteas' 308 all out.
New Zealand have got through to the end of the day at 177 for 3. Another really good knock from Kane Williamson. He lives to fight tomorrow, as will Jeden Patel.
Free kick for Zambia. Zambia takes one, Potenza goal!
In the first semi-final of the AFCON Under-20, Amajita lose to host Zambia in the second half of extra time by a single goal to nil.
Intense pressure now on the Paris Saint-Germain defence. It's Neymar trying to feed it through. It's a stretch and it's in. And I can't remember the last time I saw something like this. Extraordinary scenes at the Nou Camp. Sergio Roberto, the substitute, is the hero of the hour, and it is the greatest Champions League
Brilliant. What more can I add to that? More about all of that a little later in the Sports Bulletin. For now, it is back to Elvis for the news.
What a thrashing there. But now, top story this morning. Police Minister Nathi Nhleko says that police are searching for the suspects behind the multi-million rand robbery at OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg on Tuesday night. Now, he was speaking during a visit to the Richmond police station in KwaZulu-Natal, Midlands. It's believed that a gang pretending to be police officers stole a container as it was due to be transported on an SAA flight. Nhleko says they will leave no stone unturned to apprehend the suspects.
It's an ongoing investigation, and we have got to respect that ongoing investigation. For instance, you wouldn't expect us to tell you how much money was stolen and where that money is being taken to, because that in itself is a subject of investigation on an ongoing basis. So as and when police are ready and completed with their investigations, if there is a need to make public announcements, they will certainly do.
The police are hard at work during the investigation. There is that allegation that the police were involved. We are told that there was a marked police vehicle and another one with some blue lights. I'm told that two of those vehicles are recovered somewhere in Gauteng, and it doesn't support that allegation.
Now, the Minister of Transport, Dipuo Peters, plans to appoint an interim board at the Passenger Rail Agency to oversee the affairs of the entity in the next 3 months. The minister yesterday dismissed the current board with immediate effect, saying that she's acted in the best interests of PRASA and the public. Meanwhile, the ex-PRASA board chairperson, Popo Molefe, says that he will lodge a court challenge against the Transport Minister's decision. Molefe says he wants to demonstrate that South Africa is a constitutional democracy and can't let this decision go unchallenged. Parliament's Transport Committee has been holding hearings into the recent decisions taken at PRASA. Committee members criticized the board over a range of issues and are set to establish an inquiry into governance challenges at the agency. Now, one of the trade unions at PRASA, the United National Transport Union, says it welcomes the axing of the PRASA board, but it says the Transport Minister should also step down.
Well, the Minister has not intervened sufficiently. Not that we believe she should have intervened, but we've had numerous discussions with her, and we've complained. And she's really just sat back and allowed it to deteriorate. And I mean, it's to the detriment of this country.
Meanwhile, SABC News spoke to Judy Nokwedi about the Minister of Transport's decision to dissolve the PRASA board and the accountability of state-owned enterprises. Judy is the Senior Vice President of Arriva SA and also a consummate corporate executive.
The decisiveness with which the Minister has acted in the last few days, I think, augurs well across the board for all forms of decisions that have to be made affecting state-owned entities. I am a former managing director of the South African Public Broadcasting Corporation, and in my tenure at the SABC, we have seen many accusations, allegations, false facts being bandied around. So what I'm hoping, and I think many of us in corporate South Africa are hoping, that this begins a new way of conducting a business in South Africa. Yeah. Because if you don't have rule of law, you cannot have economic growth.
All right. In terms of corporate governance and accountability, so would you say that this is a good decision?
Well, I think when, in the case of PRASA, when there has been so much turmoil at such a vital entity in the lives of South Africans, some would argue that that the actions come too late. Some will say, I mean, my own view is it's time, and it's a good thing that the minister's done. I've worked with Minister Dipuo when she was Minister of Energy, and she is a woman of integrity. So certainly in terms of my position in corporate South Africa and the numerous roles I play on boards, this kind of action should take place sooner.
Yeah, but do you think the minister could have been under pressure maybe to act in this way? I mean, I was listening to the chairperson of the portfolio committee in Parliament yesterday saying that the board was not necessarily adding value to its mandate, and apparently previously they had even asked the minister to take this decision and dissolve the board.
I suppose one has to look at what is the core issue here. Who has final responsibility? Where does the power vest, or where does the power reside? And so the minister has her role to play in terms of representing the shareholder. The board has a role to play, and then, of course, the executive team. Now, when accountability and integrity is brought into question, then all kinds of pressures come to play. But I think as ordinary South Africans, we have an expectation that the right thing has to be done. So irrespective of where the pressure has come from, the fact of the matter is there have been huge question marks around PRASA, and let's not isolate PRASA. There are many other state-owned entities that are in similar positions, and one is hopeful that decisive action will follow in terms of all other shareholders responsible for state-owned entity boards.
Yeah, and of course with some people saying that the decision that the minister has taken is much about protecting the former CEO, Collins Leswalo. We've also seen the chairperson, Popo Molefe, saying that they will take the matter to court. How important is transparency in the workplace, specifically within the boards?
Well, I think transparency is a key driver around how boards operate. So it's transparency and understanding the role of the board. So the board has incredible responsibilities to ensure that mandates are executed, whether you're acting for your shareholders, whether you're acting for your constituents. So therefore, SCOPA, in terms of one of the arms of Parliament, one is also looking at the role that they play in terms of accountability. So key to how we hold government officials, elected board officials accountable is by nature a byproduct of how transparent our processes. And of course, critical is what information is presented to boards when they sit and adjudicate and inform decisions that they make.
Kwedi talking to us there. Now, we're conducting a poll today on this issue, and we're asking you, are you suspicious of the shenanigans happening at PRASA? As you know, the board has been dissolved by the minister. The board previously sacked and derailed the CEO. So far, we have 61 votes in, and 84% of you are saying yes. We're very suspicious of these shenanigans at PRASA rather, and 16% of you are saying no. We'll keep you updated on the poll. You can still vote. You've got a lot of time to do so. Meanwhile, residents of Rege Park in the East Rand have embarked on a protest this morning, blockading several roads in the area. It is understood that the residents went on the rampage this morning and attempted to burn the house of a local councillor. However, police managed to intervene and stop the angry protesters. Police spokesperson Lungelo Dlamini says the protest is over a lack of service delivery in the area. That's where we got to leave it for now. Now, as you know, we're talking about SASSA and payment grants on the 1st of April. Let's start that conversation with Eben.
Yeah, Elvis, the other big story, of course, in South Africa right now is what's become known as the SASSA debacle. Is it a debacle? Well, let's update you with the latest. Now, Social Development Minister Batabile Dlamini has instructed her department now and SASSA to provide the necessary information requested by the Constitutional Court. That's the latest. The court, of course, wants an update on the social grant distribution contract and what will happen from the 1st of April here in South Africa. In a statement, the minister says the Constitutional Court is best placed to deal with the matter because social assistance in South Africa is a human right enshrined in the Constitution. Dlamini's spokesperson, Lumka Olifant, says they also don't intend to oppose the Constitutional Court application brought by the Black Sash. The human rights organisation says it's determined to ensure that the Constitutional Court's oversight role is reinstated in overseeing that SASSA lawfully pays out social grants. Now, this fiasco surrounding the unresolved payment of social grants deepened. In the latest move, as you saw, the Constitutional Court wants full details of disclosure of the new contract between Cash Paymaster Services and the Social Security Agency, SASSA. The court previously declared the current contract invalid, but it was allowed to run its course to ensure that payouts to the poor were not interrupted. SASSA has since failed to find a new partner to pay grants from April of this year. Now, the Black Sash is taking SASSA to the Constitutional Court to make sure that social grants are paid come April the 1st. Now, in Cape Town, we are joined by the Black Sash, their advocacy manager, Alroy Paulus. A very good morning to you, Alroy. Thank you for joining us here on Newsroom today.
Good morning, Evan. Thank you for having us.
Alroy, what do you say with regards to the latest move by the Chief Justice on the new CPS SASSA deal?
Okay, so yesterday the Constitutional Court instructed the SASSA on deadlines, timelines, on the many, many questions that portfolio committees in Parliament, civil society organizations, interested parties wanted to know. So when I read the directions by the Chief Justice that this information needs to be supplied by 4 o'clock on Monday next week, I jumped for joy, because the very question about how much the deal will cost, the nature of the contract between Cash Paymaster Services and SASSA, is the crux often of many of our struggles in showing the transparency on an already unlawful, invalid contract that has run its course. It's ending on the 31st of March. 1 in 3 people in South Africa, 17 million SASSA beneficiaries, are anxiously waiting on how this is going to pan out. There's been many initiatives, both in the judiciary and in the legislature, that seeks to find clarity. Now, unlike the earlier newscast about PRASA, it is important for the viewers to remember that SASSA is not a state-owned company or an entity. It is a Schedule 3A public entity subject to the Constitution and 100% owned by the state. The Department of Social Development, after Treasury gives them our taxpayers' money, which this year is about 150 billion rand, transfers this money for grant distribution to SASSA. SASSA has a budget of about 7 billion, and on the 22nd of February, that money was apportioned over the medium-term expenditure framework and allocated for an outsourced service as a baseline allocation to make sure that grants are paid. The judgment, the directions given by the Chief Justice Mogoeng is an important intervention by the highest law decision maker, the judiciary in our country, because it demands that this information that was kept hidden for so long will be made public once it is responded to by SASSA, hopefully by the deadline of 4 o'clock, because the time is ticking. We've got less than a month before people will know what their fate is.
As the Black Sash, what are your fears that will come out of, firstly, the deal, but also what will happen in the next couple of weeks?
Thank you, Evan. When we submitted our papers on the 28th of February, we asked that the court ensures that no harm is caused to the grant payment system or to SASSA beneficiaries. We have been very concerned and deeply passionate about the fact that the hardship already caused as a result of the nature of the bank account established, set up by 3 entities, namely SASSA, Cash Paymaster Services, and Grindrod Bank. Even though the money is paid into the grant beneficiary's account, there are court papers with evidence, confirmatory affidavits of people who have suffered untold hardship, of deductions of airtime, electricity, loans at high administrative and interest costs, insurance deductions that is outside of the law. Several laws, the South African Social Assistance Act, Financial Advisory and Intermediary Services Act, and the SASSA Act. So the fear is that once the grants are paid, will harm be caused, and for the last 2 years, we've kept the story in the limelight, but also worked with affected persons so that they could speak truth to power themselves. And their stories are very, very heartbreaking to hear and see and experience. Because the real danger here is that the gains made by the state since 1996 will be reversed by extractive, exploitative practices of some companies, third parties that have access to this bank account without consent of the beneficiary, and that, for example, the Millennium Development Goal 1, dealing with extreme poverty, will, despite the gains made, be rolled back. So we are at a very tenuous point in our history, but I am heartened at the same time that the response by civil society, by people, the oversight, the interest in oversight, both in the judiciary and the legislature, is at a tipping point and unprecedented.
That's it. You have 1 minute to tell me, what is your expectation then from the Constitutional Court when it sits on Wednesday next week?
When the Constitutional Court sits on Wednesday the 15th, we are all sitting on the edges of our seats, Eben, to know what the court will instruct. We've applied as an applicant. Tomorrow, no, the day after tomorrow, Friday, the heads of arguments have to be tabled. There's the usual court procedures of applicants and respondents responding so that the proper court rules can apply, which is my understanding through our legal representatives, which is the Center for Applied Technologies, CALS. And what is imperative is that the judge gives us the assurance, the Chief Justice gives us the assurance that as they have instructed and given directions yesterday, that their decisions will balance the importance of Section 27 rights entrenched in our Constitution, as well as this contract issue, which in our view is secondary to the right of access to social security and social assistance.
Quickly, how do you view the fact Lumka Oliphant has come out and she says that they won't oppose the application? How do you view that quickly?
So, sorry, who said they won't oppose?
Lumka Oliphant, the Social Development Department.
We are very heartened by that decision.
Thank you very much, Alroy. Nice to talk to you today. Alroy Paulus is the advocacy manager of the Black Sash. Of course, they are the ones that have approached the Constitutional Court in this matter with SASSA and the Department of Social Development. Now, of course, we've been asking you the question, should the Constitutional Court rather approve the new SASSA CPS contract? That's been the question. You guys are tweeting us. What are you saying? Connor Nasser says, something is not right there. Is it only CPS that can do the job? Should all its failures be ignored? We need a savior, says Connor Natso. Keshlino tweets us, the court should renew and at the same time launch Operation Cleanup on those closely linked to this tenders. Hashtag rats smelling, says Keshlino. Caleb tweets us, Newsroom, as South Africans, we need to ask ourselves what comes first between humans and the law. The Chief Justice, put people first, please. That's a plea from Caleb. Yes, put people first, but interrogate the deal. That's what you guys are telling us. Anyhow, what's happening on social media right now? We'll start with, of course, a protest. Here you see some of the pictures coming out of Reicha Park. That's where the community members have embarked over that protest over service delivery. They barricaded roads with rubble and burning tires. Residents allege that foreign nationals are living in RDP houses while locals are still living in shacks. Wow. Then, in sport, the Proteas. Well, the Proteas, they are right in the midst, in the mix after the second day of the first test that's being, it's being played in Dunedin. Now the hosts are fighting back after bowling the Proteas out for 308. Then Cyclone Inau has hit Madagascar's coast and is heading towards the capital. So far, the tropical storm has killed at least 5 people. And so, tens of thousands of women took to the streets around the world in rallies and demonstrations for International Women's Day yesterday. Now, International Women's Day, the hashtag, here's some of the images from Istanbul in Turkey, the Palestine, some of them in Greece, as well as feminism. The opposite of feminism is ignorance, says that poster. Now, in the US, outside the Trump Tower, the hashtag that was doing the round was "Be bold for change." Interesting one. Go have a look at that. Now we're going to take a look at our picture of the day. It comes from Typical Girl, and it's captioned, "Nike introduced a performance hijab for Muslim women athletes. It's called the Nike Pro Hijab." Isn't that long overdue? Now, let's take a look at our comment of the day. This one comes from Lanky at M. Shills, who says, "If so much money can be stolen at a maximum security place, can you all imagine what would happen to the SASA trucks next month?" Yes, of course, there was an idea that money should be delivered to grants, or grants should be delivered on the back of trucks in massive amounts of cash. That's the tweet that talked to that. Anyhow, let's take a look at what's happening in the courts today in Cape Town with a case against the ANC Youth League spokesperson over there. Siyabulela Tom is expected to continue with a cross-examination of witnesses in the magistrate's court. Tom is facing 2 charges of criminal injury and 1 of assault. Now, senior traffic officer Jeremy Minnie testified last week that Tom had hit him and insulted another officer, Constable Heinrich Pretorius, after the driver of a car in which Tom was a passenger was arrested for drunk driving in Greenpoint. That would happen in July of last year. Interesting story. We'll keep you updated on developments on that story as it is in the courts today. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll continue to talk about grants here in South Africa.
This Ford Cougar thing is becoming a hot potato for them, excuse the pun.
US carmaker Ford has finally admitted that a fault is causing some of its Ford Cougar SUVs to catch fire, and it also formally issued a recall in South Africa.
Ford needs to take accountability.
We'll work with our dealers and try to come up with a way that satisfies them.
Welcome back. Now, remember that we're asking you that question today, and we want you to respond to that question, whether or not the Constitutional Court should approve the SASA and CPS deal. That's the question on your screen right now. Please let us know what's on your mind on Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. Now, the South African Social Security Agency, SASA, is relying on Net1's subsidiary, Cash Paymaster Services, or CPS, to continue paying social grants in April, as it has not found a viable alternative. SASA will be one of the participants at the Constitutional Court to seek approval to extend the contract with CPS, which the court declared invalid and unlawful in 2013. That's the old contract. The Social Development Minister wants the new contract to run for 2 years. Now, this would give SASA time to prepare for the takeover of the payment of social grants to the 17 million beneficiaries, a process that started 3 years ago and should have been finalized by now. The national spokesperson of SASSA, Paseka Lesatsi, now joins us in our Johannesburg studios to explain the SASSA position. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis, and good morning to the viewers as well.
First and foremost, I would like you to take us back and just explain to us the reason why SASSA, as well as the South African public, find itself in this precarious position where we stand now at the rim or the precipice of the 1st of April and worried about payments to beneficiaries.
I think, Elvis, it will be important for us to make mention of the fact that pre-2006, we had a fragmented payment system, wherein the payment in Mpumalanga and Western Cape were not the same. And after 2006, through the establishment of SASSA, we then standardized everything to make sure that whatever service you get everywhere in the country is the same. I think that's where we need to start. But however, remember in 2012, the contract which we signed with the current payment contractor was basically declared invalid. However, and this is what I must emphasize, the invalidity part of it was suspended. Hence, we were able to pay the social grant until the contract comes to an end on the 31st of March. But you must understand, Elvis, that we basically advertised the tender, and unfortunately, we got 3 companies which responded, and the response was very weak in terms of what they provided to us. And I think it took us back. And I think what we have been doing was to go and report progress to the Concord. And I think we were let down by the market because we would not find ourselves within this particular quagmire had we got bidders which were responsive to our bid.
Now, the Constitutional Court now wants an update on the social grant distribution contract with CPS, and they're also asking the question, what will happen on the 1st of April? Are you in a position to deliver on that request from the Constitutional Court?
We will, definitely. And I think there's nothing untoward what the Concord is requesting. We went to the Concord, we submitted the supplementary report, and all what the Concord is saying is that yes, we have a report in front of us, but these are the issues which we just want clarity on. And we think there's nothing to write home about. We will comply with it. We have been given until Monday to respond. And I think as an organization directed by the Minister of Social Development, Minister Bathabile Dlamini, will comply and respond to those particular questions.
Now, you heard the black sash a little bit earlier. Can you confirm that SASSA will not oppose the black sash prayer for oversight of the contract between CPS and SASSA?
We're not going to oppose to what the black sash is saying, because in any case, they are raising genuine issues. They are raising issues of protection of personal data. They are raising the issues of stoppage to the illegal deductions and so on. And I don't think as an organization we differ with Black Sash. In actual fact, we agree with what the Black Sash is saying. That's why as an organization we're not going to oppose the application by the Black Sash.
Now, we're now very close to we're approaching in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks time, we'll be on the 1st of April. How will the social grants be paid if there's not a deal on the table as yet?
Elvis, you know, I think the two of us know that if there are negotiations, it's like when you are having a partner. You negotiate with your partner in good faith. And you don't want to say to your partner, I'm negotiating with you. In case you don't want to be my partner, I've got other 5 partners lined up, you know. You negotiate with your partner, I like you, and this is what I want us to commit to ourselves. And you don't go to your partner and say, if you don't agree with me, you must know that I've got 4 partners lined up. So we are confident as an organization that come the 1st of April, all 17 million beneficiaries of social grant will get their pay.
So we established the fact that negotiations is continuing with CPS. There's also a view from the minister that this contract should be for not more than 2 years. Yeah. Can you give us details about this deal?
I think the intention, therefore, Elvis, is to make sure that there's a phase-in, smooth phase-in and phase-out. Because you don't necessarily take 6 months or 8 months to do that particular process.
Yes.
And together with the current payment contractor, the intention is to make sure that if when they leave the organization, at least whoever that is appointed or as an organization we take over payments of social grant, the processes and the infrastructure is such that there can be a smooth transition. I think that's the intention, to make sure that there are no hiccups and so on.
What is the legality of this process, though, negotiating on this new contract? Because the previous contract was unlawful.
Look, I think let's not go on to the legalities of the matter, I think for obvious reasons. However, when the process is done, because there is an in-principle agreement between us and the current payment contractor. However, there are certain legal prescriptions which must be respected, the supply chain management process. Because I don't want to come here, Elvis, again, to come and talk about how illegal we have done processes. So we need to respect them. That's why it's also important for us not to talk about them here on air. However, it is also important for us to make sure that we respect all of them, but we will come and report to the nation once the dust is settled.
There's also a fallout with CPS and SASA in terms of the money being paid per beneficiary. 16 Rand, that was the contract, they wanted 25. Where do we stand right now? This new contract, will that be increased or will it still be the same?
I think National Treasury has given us a budget, and they were very clear that you must, whatever that you do, you must do within this particular budget. Nothing, even a cent, is permitted. Therefore, the negotiations between us and the current payment contract is to make sure that whatever that we negotiate with them, it's within that particular budget that is available. That is why it's important, because there's supply chain management process which are still coming. So it will be very much dangerous for me to start talking about the rents and cents, because there is a process. I also have to respect the National Treasury, because there are certain things which they have directed us to do, and we agree with them. So we need to respect that particular process. So it will be very much dangerous for us to start talking about the 16 Rand, 80, the 25 Rand, and so on. And when you don't preempt what the BAC, which is the Bid Adjudication Committee, is going to pronounce.
But in terms of the budget, can we take it that the amount will be increased?
The budget currently, it's 2.3 billion. And this is what Treasury says, this is what is available for you to be able to do the payment. And we have to stick to the budget. We can't even go above with a cent. So I can safely say, let's leave it there, Elvis.
Well, you can take out your calculations right now, because now you can work it backwards. But we leave it at that. Will SASA be in a position now to take over this contract after the 2 years has expired with CPS, if it is going to be agreed by the Constitutional Court and you go ahead on the 1st of April?
The intention, Elvis, the long-term view is to make sure that SASA becomes, we do the payments ourselves. However, for us to be able to reach that particular point, we need to make sure that we satisfy certain prescriptions. We are walking this particular road, and we think all South Africans must work with us to make sure that we reach that particular destination, and we are confident that we'll definitely be able to reach it.
Just lastly, so the 1st of April is approaching, and you did indicate that you will make that payment. Can you assure South Africans that it will not be an April Fool's Day?
April Fool's in my vocabulary does not exist, and I can assure you, I said this thing, and I'm saying it again. On the 2nd of April, it will be on Saturday, unfortunately, but the 3rd of April, I think it will be on Monday. I'll be in the studio.
You'll be coming here. We make a promise, we make a deal, Mr. Paseka.
Okay,
we'll see you then right
much.
here in studio. That was the national spokesperson of SASA, Paseka Lesatsi, giving you their assurance. We're asking you that question. Yeben is going to take a look at that, and of course, we'll say, take a look at what you have to say. It's over to you, Yeben.
Yeah, Alva, some would say it's not a time for jokes, because the jokes might be on you. Anyhow, that's a question we're asking you. Should the Constitutional Court approve the new SASA CPS contract? Of course, they ruled against it before. Wednesday, they will rule once again. Caleb says, as South Africans, we need to ask ourselves what comes first between humans and the law. And he's begging the Chief Justice to put people first, please. Kononatso says something is not right there. Is it only CPS that can do the job? Should all its failures be ignored? We need a savior, says Kononatso. Cashlino says the court should renew and at the same time launch Operation Cleanup on those closely linked to this tenders. He says he's smelling a rat, he says. The courts, unfortunately, can't launch an Operation Cleanup. But we move on and let's take a look at what's happening on our Facebook page. Now, Professor of Medicine at the University of Witwatersrand, Professor Sarala Naika, says South Africa has reached a crisis in terms of kidney disease. Then we also see a labour union at PRASA, that's the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa. They've called on the Transport Minister, Dipuo Peters, to resign while welcoming her dissolution of the PRASA board. The United National Transport Union blames Peters for failing to deal with several crises affecting the rail agency. Then, finally, the Airports Company of South Africa has replaced the security guards who were on duty during Tuesday night's robbery at the OR Tambo International Airport as a precautionary measure. Better late than never, some people are saying. More of that on our Facebook page. You can go there and get all the juice, just like our page. That's all we ask. Now we move on to, well, some of the headlines from elsewhere around the world. I will start in Israel, where the Newsroom Post reports that while the priority in any Israeli-Palestinian accord has to be the safety and security of Israel, the choice is either two states or apartheid. That's British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson told the Jerusalem Post in an interview yesterday. Then in China, the South China Morning Post says 7% defense budget increase rate for the world's biggest army was carefully decided and aimed at keeping China from becoming tangled in an arms race with the United States. This is according to Chinese military experts. Finally, in New York, the Wall Street Journal reports that the Security Council unanimously condemned North Korea's most recent provocation at an emergency meeting, but announced no new action in response to the launch of 4 missiles this week towards the Sea of Japan. Now, we're going to take a little break, but when we come back, Lawson Naidu is in Parliament. We're going to talk to Lawson about, well, the constitutionality of the deal and what the Constitution says. What are the rights and responsibilities? And do we have even rights to know what is the gist of this deal? After the break. Welcome back. You're with Newsroom. Now, uncertainty surrounding Social Security Agency, SASSA's payment of social grants to millions of people next month, April, still remains unresolved. The contract between SASSA and Cash Paymaster Services is coming to an end on the 31st of March. That's this month. The Constitutional Court ruled that the current contract with SASSA was flawed. Now, Social Development Minister Barabile Dlamini earlier apologized to the Constitutional Court for the chaos surrounding SASSA. Now, to discuss the constitutionality of this matter, we are joined by the Executive Secretary of the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, Lawson Naidu. He's in our studios at Parliament in Cape Town. Good morning to you, Lawson. Thanks for being with us.
Morning, Eben.
Lawson, if the Social Development Department signs a contract with a Cash Paymaster Services, what does that mean in terms of the Constitution of South Africa?
Well, I think we must go back to the judgment of the Constitutional Court in 2014, Eben, when it declared the existing CPS contract invalid, but suspended that declaration of invalidity to allow SASSA to either begin a new procurement process to appoint a new service provider, or secondly, to take on the role of doing the payments itself. SASSA has failed to do both of those things, and the crisis that we face at the moment comes about as a result of the fact that SASSA has failed to inform the Constitutional Court that it is incapable of implementing either of those orders of the Constitutional Court. In November 2015, the Constitutional Court lifted its supervisory role over the implementation of those orders when SASSA told the court that they would themselves be able to pay social grants with effect from the 1st of April 2017. They have not been able to do so, and they had a responsibility to inform the court of that. And I think that is the very reason why the court has taken the approach that it has now to demand answers from SASSA on a whole range of issues by next Monday, so the court can be fully appraised of what has happened, who has failed to do what, and where really the buck should stop. Because we've had weeks now of mixed messages coming out of the Department of Social Development, from the Minister and from SASSA. We really need to get a clear understanding of what the lie of the land is at the moment.
Do we, as the citizens of South Africa, is it within our rights, within the Constitution, to know the details of the deal between this? As Justice Mogoeng has now asked for this, and he's going to get it by Monday. But do we have rights?
Well, I think the very important issue that was decided in the All-Pay case, the 2014 Constitutional Court case, was that the service provider, in this case CPS, is performing a public function and is exercising public power. So they're effectively treated as an organ of state because of the role that they are playing. And given that decision that the court has taken, the court has every right to inquire into the details of the contract to ensure that the contract is reasonable, and so on. And let us also remember that the Constitution in Section 217 requires any procurement process to be fair, equitable, competitive, and cost-effective. So the court has a responsibility to ensure that any extension or any new contract with CPS meets those requirements, especially as we have not gone through an open tender process for this, and it's been a closed negotiations process.
Now, what is your expectation of the court on Wednesday when it will rule on this matter, whether they'll proceed with it? Is it a question of the court being under pressure a little bit to put people before governance?
Well, you know, unfortunately, the court has been placed in this position due to the lack of our oversight mechanisms and accountability mechanisms that we have in place. Firstly, I think the minister has failed us. Cabinet has failed us, Parliament has failed us, and there have been a whole series of failures of oversight and accountability that has led us to the crisis situation that we are in at the moment. The Constitutional Court will need to make sure that whatever order it provides will have to provide for the fact that social grant beneficiaries must be paid come the 1st of April. And they will, I'm sure, seek to ensure that the mechanism for the delivery of those social grants is fair and reasonable and provides both for the needs of the beneficiaries as well as taking into account the fact that, as I said earlier, CPS or whomsoever is appointed to deliver social grants does so in a reasonable manner, and that the SASSA and the department are able to assure the court that proper steps and mechanisms are now in place to take over the contract from CPS at a point in time that is not too distant in the future.
Do you see there being any extra pressure on Justice Mogoeng next week, Wednesday?
No, I think the court is very, in terms of what the process it has followed so far, in terms of the directives that the court has issued, including yesterday's directives requesting all of this information from SASSA and the department, is to enable the court to put the court in a position where it can reach an informed decision on Wednesday. The court is also aware of the timeframes that it is facing, and I think we can have faith that the judiciary will once again do its duty and uphold the spirit and the principles of the Constitution, including the fact that the beneficiaries of social grants should in no way be treated unfairly.
Just talk to the constitutional rights of people with regards to grants and then the obligation of the state.
Well, the Constitution provides that that the state must provide social grants for those in need, and I think this is one of the great achievements of governments in a democratic South Africa, that we've been able to roll out the safety net to over 17 million beneficiaries, and it makes a huge contribution towards the lives of ordinary people who are living on the edges of our society in many cases. So this is something that we as South Africans in a democracy should be incredibly proud of. And it is, unfortunately, government that has led us to this precipice where we might be in danger of not being able to implement those promises that the Constitution makes to people.
This crisis didn't just fall out of the sky. Who should take responsibility, in your opinion, for the chaos that we've seen?
Well, as I've indicated, I think the responsibility lies at various levels. First and foremost, it must lie with the minister, and I think that the minister is largely responsible for the crisis and the chaos that we face because of the fact that she has been unable to provide straight answers to simple questions on this issue. We saw her performance in Parliament in front of Scopa the other day, where she was very evasive in her presentation and in her answers. So I think the minister must take the primary responsibility for the chaos that we currently face. I think Cabinet must also take some responsibility for failing to ask and continuously ask the minister what progress was being made in terms of implementing the Constitutional Court judgment. And thirdly, Parliament itself must take responsibility because, yes, Parliament has called the Minister and SASSA on various occasions, but Parliament must also accept the fact that it can't simply accept the poor answers that were given, and they needed to exercise far greater scrutiny and actually demand proper answers rather than being pushed around as they have been by the Department and SASSA.
Lawson, thanks for joining us today, live from Parliament in Cape Town. That is Lawson Naidoo. He's Executive Secretary of the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. Now, we're asking you a question. Don't forget, tweet us. What do you think? Should the Chief Justice go ahead and say, yes, people before governance? Let's renew this contract and let people get paid. What do you say? Anyhow, we're going to take the weather next with Tsietse Monare.
Hi there, welcome from the weather desk. Now, the main focus again is yet on the tropical cyclone that just passed through, so it doesn't really exist anymore. You can see from the satellite image, it's not so well defined anymore. It's not as round. You can't even see the eye of the storm anymore, so it has dissipated. It has actually been blown into oblivion, but there's lots and lots of rainfall following that along the Madagascar interior, so please still be on the lookout and be extra careful. I'll just move over to this side. Take a look at Madagascar. Yeah, you can see the pressure lines there. The isobars are indicating possibilities of strong rainfall coming up along those parts and going all the way towards the southern parts. Now, the concentration of rainfall is now along the southern part of Madagascar, so take all necessary precautions if you are along Madagascar. In terms of here in South Africa and mainland continent, the African continent looks like there'll be more rainfall towards the northern interior for Tanzania, Malawi, as well as some parts of the southern interior of Angola. And South African Weather Service again warns of possibilities hot and dry conditions towards the Western Cape province. That could lead to veld fire. So please just take all necessary precautions along those parts. And you can see temperatures confirmed as well. They're quite high up. Springbok at 35 degrees. It's going to be sunny. It's going to be really hot along that western interior. But a bit of showers are expected along the eastern coastline towards KwaZulu-Natal, as well as over much of the Mozambican coast. Pretoria in South Africa is at a maximum of 30 degrees. Quite a hot day today. The rest of the weekend, in fact, is going to be quite warm across South Africa. Not much rainfall is expected. And then again, clear conditions for some parts of Zimbabwe, as well as over much of Botswana. But a bit of rain is coming for the northern part of Botswana, going towards the west, for places such as Khansi, as well as over Kanye. Those regions, Maun, you should expect up to 60% chance of rain. And then Central Africa, well, a bit of rain for Yaoundé, as well as over Banjul. Temperatures are still very high along those parts. Addis Ababa, much cooler, though, at 26, but Kampala and places such as Bujumbura in Burundi, those are much cooler at maximums of about 23 degrees. Kigali's at 27. Nyeri also upper 20s are expected there. And then again, no chance of rainfall expected for Algeria. Just clear conditions along those parts. Yeah, well, Sahara Desert, quite hot, quite dry, nothing happening there. I mean, the most excitement you'll get is there over the northern parts of Libya, where you see 30% chance of rainfall. So maybe that could come along. Yeah, so they're going through their winter, end of winter, and you'll see some of the temperatures already going up. Cairo, 25, and Baghdad around 18 degrees. Damascus is at 24, and Tripoli around 16. So those will remain like that, upper teens rather, and lower 20s maybe for the next couple of weeks. But then the hot and dry conditions are coming back again. Bamako very hot, 39. Niamey 41 degrees, and N'Djamena also along those upper 30s. Temperatures along those parts, yes, are getting hotter and hotter. And then along the coast, a bit of rainfall coming in. So the Hamatan season sort of going away. That's the dry period in places such as Ghana, as well as over much of Cote d'Ivoire. So now you're seeing a bit of rainfall returning. So it's getting a lot better along those parts. That's where I leave it for the weather, but there'll be more later, so stay tuned.
Technology is all around us and some can't live without it.
There's also the problem of internet connectivity.
I was speaking to a robot.
It also makes a few governments panic and therefore they block the internet from time to time.
They just banned the internet, which is the source of my livelihood.
For African technology and social media news, join me, Phumelele Zondi, on Network every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Media Monitor. I'm your host, Alicia Jali. What has been happening on the digital front?
To win the CAF Championship was a huge thing, and perhaps we ought to have celebrated him even more.
Absolutely.
73% of our schools, regardless whether they're in the township or they're in urban areas, if you go to those schools, you are guaranteed a matric pass.
It is the one thing that we haven't done well as a country. We have thrown money at it. I mean, if you ask for figures, you'll be told we're spending well in education.
90 billion.
But the performance of the system has not been good enough.
This might look like trucks carrying useless scrap, but to a few, this is a gold mine. Their work involves waiting for trucks that have offloaded steel so they can grab the little that is left over.
We used to take the spades.
In their quest to put food on their tables, they put their lives in danger.
Very good morning to you. Welcome back to us here. It's the Newsroom show. We are live from Johannesburg, and I'm with Kendall Mahamati. Nice one. Nice to have you with us, Kendall.
Oh, very good to be here. I really enjoy it. There's quite a lot to cover in the sports, and I know everybody's ready to go on that one.
What's with those two dodgy penalties that Barcelona got?
I actually had a look at them again. Only one of them was kind of dodgy. The first one, not really.
It kind of really set it up, though. It was a great comeback. You have to give it.
Phenomenal.
But, you know, Jose Mourinho says always Barcelona get all the luck. He doesn't quite understand it. It's not a conspiracy. Anyhow, serious business, of course, here in South Africa. The Constitutional Court wants an update on the social grant payment contract and what will be happening from the 1st of April. So we're asking you, should the Constitutional Court approve the new SASSA CPS contract? You guys are tweeting us on it. Let's have a look at what you guys are saying with regards to this. My brother's keeper, Kolwani Ndlovu, says, Newsroom, not until they give us a satisfactory answer as to what they are trying to pull. Interesting one.
Doc Moses Vilane comes in. Newsroom, the court has no choice as 17 million lives are at stake. They have to think about the people. Hashtag SASSA and CPS.
Yeah, some would say, put the people before even governance. Is that the scenario? Caleb comes in, he says, as South Africans, we need to ask ourselves what comes first between humans and the law. The Chief Justice, put people first, please, is the plea. An interesting one. What is your take on that? Love to hear it. Tweet us now. We've got a poll running also, because we've got another big story here in South Africa. The Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, the board was dismissed yesterday. Now, we're asking you, are you suspicious of what's been going on? The CEO, the board? Now there are calls for even the minister. Anyhow, are you suspicious? 65 votes in, Kendall.
Yeah, 65 votes, of 85% of which saying yes, they are, and 15% said no, nothing wrong with what's going on at PRASA. Doc Moses Vilane comes in with their first tweet, and he says, why does the Minister of Transport have the power to dissolve the PRASA board, yet the Minister of Communication cannot?
That's why you're a Doc, Moses. You're a very smart question. Perry Martin comes, he says, this mess in PRASA is being going on for years now, and why must we first wait for the bomb to explode before we act? Says Perry Martin.
Ikona Naso says, yes, politics are at play, and corruption is the victor.
Those are your tweets. Keep it coming. We love you to interact with us. We love your views. Ultimately, that's the new world of news that we all live in. We're all part of this process. Let's take a look now at the top stories right now. Social Development Minister Batapili Dlamini has instructed her department and SASSA to provide the necessary information requested by the Constitutional Court. Passenger Rail Agency Board Chairperson Popo Molefe says he will legally challenge Transport Minister Dipuo Peters' decision to dissolve the PRASA board. And the Airports Company of South Africa, AXA, has replaced the security guards who were on duty on Tuesday night when the OR Tambo International Airport was robbed. They say it's only a precautionary measure. Now, those are your top stories. Let's go over to Kendall to see what's in the sport.
Well, you know, it's a very interesting one that we're not talking so much about Amajita having a third-place playoff place because they are in the World Cup, the Under-20 World Cup. We're talking about Barcelona out in the Champions League. Nobody really expected it. Had you been a betting man, which way would you have bet?
Not in favour of Barcelona, but knowing that, you know, they do get away with murder in the football world, I probably would have put a few rand on there. 36-1 before the game, wasn't it?
Yeah. Now, phenomenal stuff. I would have put some 10 rand on it. I'm not a betting man either.
A lot of money was made either way, I tell you that.
Yeah, no, I think that's something to look into. If you're going to be considering watching football games and trying to make money, do that. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
A bit of bounce again from Morkel. Williamson's running hard, hoping to get two, and he should get back safely.
The two of the first tests between New Zealand and South Africa, the hosts, are building a solid first innings in response to Proteas 308 all out.
But New Zealand have got through to the end of the day at 177 for 3. Another really good knock from Kane Williamson. He lives to fight tomorrow, as will Jedin Patel.
Free kick for Zambia. Zambia takes one, opportunity goal!
In the first semi-final of the AFCON Under-20s, Amajita lose to host Zambia in the second half of extra time by a single goal to nil.
Intense pressure now on the Paris Saint-Germain defence. It's Neymar trying to feed it through. It's a stretch and it's in. And I can't remember the last time I saw something like this. Extraordinary scenes at the Nou Camp. Sergio Roberto, the substitute, is the hero of the hour, and it is the greatest Champions League knockout comeback of all time.
You've got to give it to the commentators from the UEFA Champions League. You cannot add anything to what they've just given you. I'll have more about that a little later with more detail. So now it's back to Eben who's got the news.
Yeah, thank you, Kendall. Very good morning to you. Our top story right now. Police Minister Nat Nhleko says police are searching for the suspects behind the multi-million rand robbery at the OR International Airport in Johannesburg earlier this week. He was speaking during a visit to the Richmond police station in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands. It's believed a gang pretending to be police officers stole a container as it was due to be transported on an SAA flight. Nhleko says they will leave no stone unturned to apprehend the suspects.
It's an ongoing investigation, and we have got to respect that ongoing investigation. For instance, you wouldn't expect us to tell you how much money was stolen and where that money is being taken to, because that in itself is a subject of investigation on an ongoing basis. So as and when police are ready and completed with their investigations, if there is a need to make public announcements, they will certainly do.
The police are hard at work during the investigation. There is that allegation that the police were involved. We are told that there was a marked police vehicle and another one with some blue lights. I'm told that two of those vehicles are recovered somewhere in Gauteng, and it doesn't support that allegation.
Now, yesterday was International Women's Day. Today, we talk about economic empowerment by women for women, one of the strong themes running through the Africa for Africa Women's Conference in Port Elizabeth. The targeted sectors are textile, agriculture, hospitality and financial sustainability. The conference aims to put resolutions in place that will empower women in Africa.
Working towards the United Nations Vision 2063, the conference will better equip women in understanding policies to empower them to capitalize on the opportunities within it. Tapping into the economy and finding financial backing are two big challenges women entrepreneurs face.
But the only hindrance is the issue of finance. You know, it is so difficult for a woman to go out there and borrow money. The first thing that the bank will ask you to be about collateral. You know, as you know, most of us married women, we treasure being married. But it's not that our men, they always support us. They always want to put us back into managing a house, because that's where they think we are best known of, handling. Nothing else. You go in the corporate world. There are few women who are in the corporate world, but that does not mean that we can't have more women going out there. But all what I'm trying to say is women need to be encouraged.
Several successful mechanisms are in place in South Africa to assist emerging women business owners. But it is not perfect yet.
I think that, one of the things that government has done well is making sure that, we've got these financial institutions, if I would call them, your NEFs and all of that, across the country, where our people, for the first time, get an opportunity to know that if I want to open a business, I've got somewhere to go. But what we're not doing right is you look at their requirements, for instance, especially this time. Most young women that I speak to always say, well, they're there, but I don't qualify for 90% of the things that are required for me in order for me to get a finance. I've got this great business idea and all of that, and I see that I can make it happen in my own community, but I'm unable to access funding because of the requirements that are there in order for me to be able to get into there.
The conference is an idea-sharing platform. The Seychelles is a success story of women empowerment. 80% of the country's SMMEs are owned by women.
One of the first things I usually tell them is learn to work together, learn to respect each other, and learn to trust. We have a big problem where competition is concerned. We don't like competition, we don't like to share ideas. Knowledge should be shared. When you share ideas, you learn.
The conference is also using smaller commissions to address many of the questions directly. Iwe Poti, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
Of course, Iviwe is attending and reporting on the conference. She's there. Let's cross over to her now for a little bit more. Very good morning to you, Iviwe.
Good morning, Iabin, and we are here at the conference in Port Elizabeth. As you can see behind me, there are quite a few women, starting with their exhibition stands, which started about 2 years ago as well, to go hand in hand with the conference. These are the same women that are part of SMMEs, that are benefiting a lot from the commissions that have been held here by your women coming from all different parts of Africa, that are excelling in the business sector, to give them advice. If I can tell you, some of the main themes that have come up that we were listening into yesterday were your textile industry, agriculture, financial stability, and as well as hospitality. You'll remember that, Eben, when we talk about African women, these things are not foreign to them. We grow up with the skill of being able to cook, being able to make dresses. We have our own African prints. If I can just show you here behind me, very interesting, is a baby carrier that has been made out of African material as well. And it's our own South African, actually Port Elizabeth baby carrier. So those are some of the things that they're capitalizing on in terms of how do we use our own materials, how do we work as African women together to ensure, that we are benefiting and creating a better economy amongst all of us in Africa, but specifically how do we empower these women? How do they access funding? How do they then ensure that their companies, are being able to employ other people, being able to grow? How do they put themselves on the market?
The things that is often lamented, despite all the moves towards equality and the discussion, is that women still battle in leadership positions. What's coming out of the conference with regards to women in leadership positions, not just in South Africa, but around the continent?
Eben, yesterday we had a lengthy conversation with a lady leading SMMEs in Seychelles, Penny, who said, in Africa, we have a problem where women have to constantly work towards proving themselves. But if we use South Africa as a case study, in 1994, we went forward with leaders, male leaders that were African. They never had to prove themselves. They never had to work years and years on end trying to, ensure the society that they are ready. Women are ready. Women do struggle in leadership positions because they are always looked at in doubt, because they always have to work extra hard in terms of proving themselves. When using Seychelles as a case study, she said in Seychelles, 48% of their parliament is actually women. 80% of their SMMEs are solely owned and headed by women. We don't have that in the other African countries because you find that African women, for example, in South Africa, have to prove themselves. We're always having a debate whether South Africa is ready for a female president, which is we are. We had a deputy president who's actually doing very well now as part of the international women that are leading the country and also fighting for human rights. So when they were speaking here yesterday, they were saying, I think one of the slogans that I actually catched in one of the commissions that we sat in was that if I can do it, then so can you. So they're also looking, in terms of creating an African women's bank where women won't have to, have to now meet certain requirements or have to prove themselves at lengthier extents than what your male counterpart will have to do. Now it will be women trying to empower women. So I think one of also the benefits that will come out of this conference this year is that they're not looking only to empower these women, but also in terms of the resolutions that can come out of it, in terms of empowering those women that want to be in leadership positions, which is very important, giving these women the confidence. Because one of the ladies that we spoke to from Zambia yesterday said, all a woman needs is just a bit of motivation.
Thank you very much, Iviwe. From the second annual Africa Women's Conference, that's our reporter, Iviwe Porti, live from Port Elizabeth. Now, let's go back to, well, one of our top stories today. Minister of Transport, Dipuo Peters, plans to appoint an interim board at the Passenger Rail Agency to oversee the affairs of the entity in the next 3 months. The minister yesterday dismissed the current board with immediate effect, saying she acted in the best interests of PRASA and the public. Now, ex-PRASA board chairperson Popo Molefe says they will lodge a court challenge against the transport minister's decision. Molefe says he wants to demonstrate that South Africa is a constitutional democracy and can't let the decision go unchallenged. Parliament's Transport Committee has been holding hearings into recent decisions taken at PRASA. Committee members criticised the board over a range of issues and are set to establish an inquiry into governance challenges at the rail agency. Now, since one of the trade unions at PRASA, the United National Transport Union, says it welcomes the axing of the PRASA board, but it says the transport minister should be fired as well.
Well, the minister has not intervened sufficiently. Not that we believe she should have intervened, but we've had numerous discussions with her, and we've complained, and she's really just sat back and allowed it to deteriorate. And I mean, it's to the detriment of this country.
Now, earlier, SABC News spoke to Judy Nkwedi about the Minister of Transport's decision to dissolve the PRASA board and the accountability at state-owned enterprises. Judy is a Senior Vice President of Arriva South Africa and also a consummate corporate executive.
The decisiveness with which the Minister has acted in the last few days, I think, augurs well across the board for all forms of decisions that have to be made affecting state-owned entities. I am a former managing director of the South African Public Broadcasting Corporation, and in my tenure at the SABC, we have seen many accusations, allegations, false facts being bandied around. So what I'm hoping, and I think many of us in corporate South Africa are hoping, that this begins a new way of conducting a business in South Africa. Yeah. Because if you don't have rule of law, you cannot have economic growth.
All right. In terms of corporate governance and accountability, so would you say that this is a good decision?
Well, I think when, in the case of PRASA, when there has been so much turmoil at such a vital entity in the lives of South Africans, some would argue that that the actions come too late. Some will say, I mean, my own view is it's time, and it's a good thing that the minister's done. I've worked with Minister Dipuo when she was Minister of Energy, and she is a woman of integrity. So certainly in terms of my position in corporate South Africa and the numerous roles I play on boards, this kind of action should take place sooner.
Yeah, but do you think the minister could have been under pressure maybe to act in this way? I mean, I was listening to the chairperson of the portfolio committee in Parliament yesterday saying that the board was not necessarily adding value to its mandate, and apparently previously they had even asked the minister to take this decision and dissolve the board.
I suppose one has to look at what is the core issue here. Who has final responsibility? Where does the power vest, or where does the power reside? And so the minister has her role to play in terms of representing the shareholder. The board has a role to play, and then, of course, the executive team. Now, when accountability and integrity is brought into question, then all kinds of pressures come to play. But I think as ordinary South Africans, we have an expectation that the right thing has to be done. So irrespective of where the pressure has come from, the fact of the matter is there have been huge question marks around PRASA, and let's not isolate PRASA. There are many other state-owned entities that are in similar positions, and one is hopeful that decisive action will follow in terms of all other shareholders responsible for state-owned entity boards.
Yeah, and of course with some people saying that the decision that the minister has taken is much about protecting the former CEO, Collins Leswalo. We've also seen the chairperson, Popo Molefe, saying that they will take the matter to court. How important is transparency in the workplace, specifically within the boards?
Well, I think transparency is a key driver around how boards operate. So it's transparency and understanding the role of the board. So the board has incredible responsibilities to ensure that mandates are executed, whether you're acting for your shareholders, whether you're acting for your constituents. So therefore, you know, SCOPA, in terms of one of the arms of Parliament, one is also looking at the role that they play in terms of accountability. So key to how we hold government officials, elected board officials accountable is by nature a byproduct of how transparent our processes. And of course, critical is what information is presented to boards when they sit and adjudicate and inform decisions that they make.
Yeah, it's a story that's very much in the headlines right now, and we're conducting a poll. We're asking you, are you suspicious of what's going on at PRASA? I think some have called it shenanigans. Now, we've got 70 votes in. 86% of you are saying yes. The activity around it is suspicious. Very interesting. Now, we've got a developing story right now. A disturbing one at that. 9 people have been rushed to hospital after they were shot at with live ammunition at Reiche Park, east of Johannesburg. Now, Reiche Park residents went on the rampage this morning, burning tyres and blockading roads with rocks. They are protesting over what they say is poor service delivery in the area. It's understood that the residents went on the rampage. They attempted to burn the house of a local councillor. Police then intervened. The matter seems to have escalated right now. Our reporter is on the scene. We'll try and get an update for you as soon as possible. What's the situation? But we can confirm 9 people have been rushed to hospital after they've been shot at with live ammunition during a service delivery protest at Reiche Park on the eastern side of the city of Johannesburg. Now, moving on. The African peer review mechanism celebrates its 14th anniversary today. Former President Thabo Mbeki and the co-initiator of the organization is expected to give a keynote address later. Its CEO, Professor Eddie Maloka, believes the institution is still relevant.
He's been in the job for a year, and APRM CEO Professor Eddie Maloka maintains the review mechanism must remain voluntary. Despite criticism that it lacks teeth when member states fail to implement recommendations, Maloka maintains sanctions are not an option.
It's not in the philosophy of APRM to punish. It's not supposed to punish. It's not intended to punish or to shame a country. If a country has committed itself to certain engagements and there's no movement there, we have the responsibility as the Secretariat and working together with the panel to encourage that country. You know, especially some of the countries that have been members for long but are not taking up the reviews.
While the review mechanism marks its 14th anniversary, only 36 countries are signed up and 20 have been reviewed so far. This year, there will be 7 reviews, including a second review of Nigeria. Maloka says South Africa should urgently start its second review post the 2007 report.
We are aware that they are completing an assessment of how they implemented the first review, and they will be beginning a process now of the self-assessment. We are quite keen to see South Africa joining Kenya also, and Nigeria. Now Uganda is also going, Mozambique. These countries that will be doing, and it's going to happen soon. And it will re-energize South Africans again, like it did way back there. I think it was in 2007.
Optimistic that more African states will join the peer review mechanism. Aldrin St-Pierre, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, the former president, that is Thabo Mbeki, he's taken to the podium right now. Let's cross over straight there for his keynote address.
Our responsibilities with regard to ensuring that these goals are achieved. So, And therefore, let us set up this peer review mechanism. And peer review because the idea was, with, as again Ambassador Mpogo has just said, we must assess ourselves. So hence the benchmarks which everybody knows that were agreed, the political benchmarks, governance benchmarks, in all of these benchmarks, socioeconomic development, etc., to say we must then assess each one of our countries according to these various benchmarks. Not because we're establishing a rating agency. There was some of the countries on the continent I know didn't want to join the peer review system because they thought it was a rating agency. We were not establishing a rating agency. We were saying, you know, each of our governments must have the capacity to be able to implement the things that need to be implemented. And therefore, let us see among ourselves what state is each one of our countries in, with a view to assisting each one of our countries to meet particular standards. I remember, for instance, I'm about to finish, Lolan. I remember, for instance, when we did the review of Ghana, the peer review of Ghana said one of the important things there was corruption. There's corruption right through the system, including the traditional leaders and so on. That here is an important problem. So we discussed this and we say, well, as peers, with President Kufuor was president of Ghana at the time, to say, well, here is a matter that needs to be attended to in Ghana. And part of the discussion showed that the office of the Auditor General in Ghana was very weak. And therefore, that an instrument that you would need to fight corruption in Ghana was, as I say, very weak. So Ghana needs a stronger office of the Auditor General. So we discussed that to say, but therefore something needs to be done about this. And so President Kufuor says, I agree, but to set up an office, effective office of the Auditor General, requires money. So we all agree. We say it requires funds to set up the office. In the end, of course, it will pay for itself as it sorts out this thing of public finances. So Ghana says, President Kufuor says, I agree, we need it. It needs funds, we don't have the funds. So therefore, the response of the peers had to be, well, in which case, let us all contribute something to make sure that Ghana does have this capacity of an Auditor General's office, because the aim, I'm saying, was not rating agency, but the aim was to make sure that all of us, these countries which must be instruments in terms of the implementation of NEPAD, they have the capacity. So it becomes our responsibility, a common responsibility, to say, therefore, let us all contribute to make sure that Ghana does have the resources to establish this Office of the Auditor General. That's how the system is supposed to work. So, so the purpose, therefore, is to empower all of us, that in terms of our governance systems all around, our countries position themselves in such a way that they meet all of these matters which the chairperson, Professor Hael, mentioned, the various standards, including the capacity to be able to effect this process of socio-economic transformation, which was defined in NEPAD. And the last thing I'd like to say about this is that in the context of the development of this socio-economic program, of course, the matter arose about peace and stability on the continent. That this issue is very important to create the conditions for the development that we're talking about. So what are we going to do about this issue of peace and stability on the continent? It arose, I'm saying in that discussion, this issue, but in the end, it got us who were working on the NEPAD thing to talk to the European Union. But that's when the fund was established. A peace fund was established by the EU. Because we're saying the success with regard to NEPAD is going to depend on a peaceful continent. And therefore, we need to have the institutions and the money and so on to create that peace. Though we're not saying the NEPAD process is also peacemaking, but the conditions for development, as I say, that as a result of which the EU then decided to allocate funds, a peace fund, which exists up to today, to fund this peacekeeping process on the continent. But to come back, therefore, in the end, before I hand over to Professor Gambari, the NEPAD thing, which is important today, because the responsibility to transform our continent, to make it democratic, to make it peaceful, to rid it of poverty, to rid it of underdevelopment, rests principally in our hands. And this instrument, the peer review mechanism, must still continue to discharge its function of ensuring that we become the instruments to drive this process for the transformation of our continent, consistent with the benchmarks which have been agreed, which constitute the peer review system. Thanks, Professor Kamar.
Well, that was former President Thabo Mbeki delivering the keynote address at the African Peer Review Mechanism celebration of its 14th anniversary today. Of course, we're looking at social grants as our theme for today. Now, despite South Africa's transition from apartheid in 1994, the social landscape is still divided along racial lines. South African inequality levels remains very high, and social grants were then introduced to address the poverty levels amongst the poorest of the poor. Social grants play a critical role in reducing poverty and promoting social development. Now, for many, social grants have become a source of income, and the difference between going to bed on an empty stomach or putting food on the table. Many families have also managed to provide education and health for their children because of this. Now, to discuss the importance of social grants, we are joined in studio by the UJ Centre for Social Development in Africa, Professor Tessa Hochveld. Professor, very good morning to you and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
For those that don't know, how important are social grants in the landscape of the South Africa of today?
Very important. Social grants have made a big difference in people's food security. And the important part is that they're predictable. They are, it's money that comes in at the same time in the same amount, so people can rely on it. And it's dispersed in cash, which is very important because it gives people choices. But I just want to add to that, is it's important to remember that social grants aren't people's only income. The 380, for example, from a child support grant, can't really provide for all the needs of a family. So social grants are a very important income stream, but they're only one income stream. Poor people have very many different ways of managing their survival. 17
million social grants in South Africa. That's almost 1 in 3 with regards to the population, which in itself is very high. Do we have a breakdown as to how many? I think it's about 12 million child grants, and yes, the rest are elderly.
It's about 12 million child grants, approximately 3.5 million old age pensions, about 1.5 million disability grants, and then there are a number of smaller grants that make up the rest. So the vast majority of our grants are child support grants.
Can South Africa, and can the Constitutional Court for that matter next week, afford to not extend this contract and then not pay social grants on the 1st of April?
I don't think that's going to happen, that grants are not going to be paid. I think in this crisis, there's many differences of opinion, but the one thing people do agree on is that grants need to be paid on the 1st. So the question is not whether grants will be paid or not, because I think that they will, but under what conditions, whether the solution that's been found is in the public interest, and whether this is the right solution going forward.
Talking about going forward, we see in other countries they're quite successful add-ons, things like food stamps and the like. Is that not a system that we should be looking at in the future in South Africa instead of just disbursing cash?
Actually, research has shown that cash is a very effective form of transfer. While food stamps can be useful, the benefit of cash is that the people who know most what they need get to choose. And I'll just give you an example, because we know that grants are spent, the majority of the cash is spent on food. But in the case of the child support grant, the next most important area of spending is on school-related costs.
Yeah.
And that's not on fees, but on things like transport to school or uniforms. And if it were just food stamps, then we would be reducing the ability for people to make those choices themselves.
Now, we talk about inequality in South Africa. Are we really seeing grants make an impact in reducing inequality, or is this more of a cosmetic thing?
Actually, there has been research by both international and national agencies that show that there is a reduction in inequality and a reduction in poverty due directly to grants. What we do need to understand, though, that doesn't mean we're claiming, or that the government can claim that grants have eliminated poverty. Nobody would imagine that. So grants take the edge of the desperation of poverty. They make a big difference in food security. But they don't change the fact that people are living in poor conditions.
Now, we've run a whole show thus far with regards to, of course, the Social Security Agency and what they've done. We've spoken to them. We've spoken to a whole host of stakeholders. People before process, or people before governance, are what some people said. Is this a convenient truce that we should accept?
Unfortunately, my opinion is it's the only truce currently that we can expect, because we have to pay grants on the 1st of April. But I do think that this debacle has shown us that the backstage stuff about administration, management, clean governance is absolutely critical. And I think that the most important thing that this debacle has put on the table is that we can't just assume that the end result is the only important result, that people are paid. We need to make sure that it's paid in a way that doesn't disadvantage either the individuals or us as taxpayers, because if there's an increase in cost, it's you and I who are going to pay for it, or some of the issues around governance and clean management.
The lessons that we've learnt from this whole debacle, what are the lessons, and what options can be explored to lessen dependency on grants, if one can call it that?
Well, I think that's actually two different questions. So to address the last you asked about dependency, is I think that we are going to have a whole population that requires grants in order to survive, as long as we have the levels of unemployment we have. So it's not that people are sitting back in a lazy way, not interested in doing other things. In our research, we've seen people consistently say what do they want most when they're receiving a grant is actually a job. So they want to work. But we can't change the nature of our of the issues we're dealing with, the social and political issues, without a massive increase in employment. So that's the first thing. So it's about our economy. But the second thing is, I think the lessons are about our oversight and how important it is to make sure that we hold people accountable at every stage of the process in making decisions and changing administration for the future.
Lessons learned, one hopes. Thank you very much for joining us today. That's the UJ Centre for Social Development in Africa's Professor Tessa Hochfeld joining us today and talking about, well, the contribution that grants make to the South African society. It doesn't close the gap, but it takes the edge off the extreme poverty that we see. And without that, too many people will be at risk. Thank you once again for being with us today. Now, of course, we've been asking you this question: should the Constitutional Court approve the new SASA CPS contract? What are you guys saying with regards to it? There are the questions on the screen. Lechasa says, yes, the CPS contract. The Constitutional Court said the current one is invalid. I wish a new one can be valid and approved, yes, so that the people can eat. Ruth says, Newsroom, let's hope the Concourt will think for people first on Monday. Well, Ruth, they're getting the documents on Monday. They'll make a decision on Wednesday. My brother's keeper, I'll call one in Ndlovu, he says, not until they give us a satisfactory answer as to what they are trying to pull. Well, the Constitutional Court will let us know, because this deal, suddenly all the information has to go to, well, I'm still looking at the screen there. Suddenly all the information, well, has to go to the Chief Justice, who will interrogate this and then report back to us on Wednesday. Be interesting. We're going to take a short commercial break. Now, when we come back, we'll be with Kendall Mahamate and the sport.
The Orange River is South Africa's major river. It rises in the Drakensberg in Lesotho, known as the Senqu River. It flows through Free State via Van der Kloof Dam, Eastern Cape into Gariep Dam, Northern Cape and Richterveld Transfrontier Park, which is part of Namibia. Orange River is 2,090 kilometers long. It finally flows into the Atlantic Ocean at Alexander Bay.
Good morning, welcome back. There's Kendall Mahamate, and I can't wait to get going because we've got lots to cover for you in the sports today. Starting with how New Zealand cricket captain Kane Williamson is leading a solid Kiwi reply to South Africa's first innings total of 308 in the first test in Dunedin. The Black Caps trail the Proteas by 131 runs after posting 177 for the loss of 3 wickets at stumps on day 2 at the University Oval.
A ball that is just 9 overs old now.
The Proteas resumed their first innings on 229 for 4. Temba Bavuma was on 38, Dean Algar on 128. But Algar was the first to go. A short ball from Neil Wagner was just too good. Algar out for a career-best 140, which saved the Proteas when they were struggling early on.
And finally, they crack Algar.
The last 6 Proteas wickets then fell for just 56 runs. Quinton de Kock contributed 10 runs and Bavuma 64 before he fell victim to an informed Trent Bolt. Bolt finally grabbed 4 wickets and Wagner 3 to restrict South Africa to 308 just after lunch.
And all over.
Seamer Vernon Philander then struck early for South Africa, getting rid of opener Tom Latham for 10 in the 6th over. G. Raval and Williamson put on 102 for the second wicket before Keshav Maharaj and Algar joined forces to dismiss Raval for 52.
A lack of concentration, it seems, and try and keep Algar out of the match. It's not easy in this test match.
Dangerman Ross Taylor was on 8 when he retired hurt with a knee injury.
It'll be touch and go whether he can take any further part in this match.
Maharaj struck again in the 51st over, Hashim Amla taking a brilliant left-handed catch to send Henry Nichols packing out for 12. Williamson remains a thorn in the South African side. He's unbeaten on 78. Night watchman Jeetan Patel with 9 will resume the innings with his captain with a total on 177 for 3. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
Now, hosts Zambia are through to the final of the 2017 Under-20 African Cup of Nations. This after a 1-0 win over Amajita in the first semi-final. Amajita will now contest the bronze medal against the loser of the second semi-final between Senegal and Guinea later today.
Despite facing a daunting task of taking on tournament favourites Zambia in the first semi-final, South Africa came into the contest confident of positive results. Amachita were impressive during the group stages, winning 2 of their 3 games against Cameroon and Sudan, scoring 9 goals in the process. However, South Africa needed to improve defensively if they were to cause an upset, having conceded 6 goals in the group stages. The game got off to a promising start, to both the teams looking to commit numbers going forward in search of the game's opener. However, there was little clear-cut goal-scoring opportunities for much part of the first stanza, both the teams' defence looking solid on the day. The home side resorted to shooting from outside the box. Emmanuel Banda's powerful shot from range inches wide of the mark in the 28th minute. The first real chance of the second half went South Africa's way, Mbata at the end of a brilliant move, only for the 19-year-old to sky his attempt at goal. Despite both the teams' efforts to score a late winner, after the final whistle the contest was still scoreless, taking the game to extra time. With the contest heading for penalties, Zambia scored the late winner with 10 minutes to go.
Zambia finally broken the deadlock here.
Joseph Mohali, SABC News.
Now staying with soccer news but bringing it back home, Polokwane City joined Mamelodi Sundowns in the Nedbank Cup round of 16, following a comfortable 3-1 win over African All-Stars at the old Peter Mokaba Stadium. All-Stars gave a fine account of themselves in the first half, but predictably it was the PSL side who looked the more polished and potent outfit. Rise and Shine broke the deadlock just past the midway point of the first half when Vusumuzu Mgomezulu set up Puleng Tlolane to score. Polokwane doubled their lead in the 72nd minute through a long-range strike by Zambian Solani Piri, his first since joining Rise and Shine in the January transfer window. And substitute Walter Musona, the younger brother of Knowledge Musona, secured the result minutes later. All-Stars claimed a consolation goal in the final minute of regulation time, with Mahau Mutaung converting a penalty. Now, Spanish football giants Barcelona pulled off one of the most epic comebacks in the UEFA Champions League history when they beat French champions Paris Saint-Germain 6-1 in the second leg after losing 4-0 in the first leg in Paris. The Catalans are now through to the quarterfinals of the competition and are joined by Borussia Dortmund, who walloped Benfica 4-0 thanks to a hat-trick by Gabon captain Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang.
Barcelona took the match to PSG from the onset in their quest to reverse the 4-0 deficit, and Luis Suarez opened the scoring just 3 minutes into the match.
Oh, what a sensational start to the match!
Barca were camping in PSG's half, and something had to give.
So he's done well, Iniesta. Oh, and it's a second goal! And it really is game on here.
Neymar's going to get onto it here. He's stumbling. Well, you have to say Neymar runs into him.
It's Messi for Barcelona! 3-0! Stunning start to the second half.
The home team enjoyed a 3-0 lead when Edison Cavani pulled one back for the visitors, a goal that left Barcelona faithful stunned.
That's the goal that PSG were so desperately hoping for. Now, what's Neymar got up his sleeve here? Oh, he's got something really special up his sleeve.
Neymar, however, scored 2 in the final few minutes. The Brazilian superstar then set up one for substitute Sergio Roberto deep into stoppage time to send the Camp Nou into raptures.
It's Neymar trying to feed it through. It's a stretch and it's in. And I can't remember the last time I saw something like this. Extraordinary scenes at the Nou Camp. Sergio Roberto, the substitute, is the hero of the hour. And it is the greatest Champions League knockout comeback of all time.
The home side celebrated as if they had won a championship, and who will blame them after such a gutsy performance?
Goes the way of Dortmund.
Borussia Dortmund played host to Benfica in Germany, and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who missed a penalty in the 1-0 first leg defeat in Portugal, made amends by levelling the tie early on. Benfica started to create opportunities as they pushed numbers forward, and that kicked Dortmund into action as they went ahead on aggregate in the 59th minute when Christian Pulisic made it 2-0 to the Germans.
Looking ball for Pulisic, and they've done it! It's the 18-year-old American. He has found the second goal.
2 minutes later, Aubameyang put the game out of Benfica's reach with a goal from close range. The Gabonese completed his hat-trick with 5 minutes remaining, taking his goal tally for the season to 30 in the process.
In the centre! And he claims the hat-trick and fires Dortmund into the quarter-finals of the Champions League.
Mduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
And so on a night when South Africa's Olympic long jump silver medalist Luvo Manyonga leaped to a world-leading distance of 8.46 meters, the spotlight really belonged to young gun Gift Tlotliso. He pipped 400-meter world record holder and Olympic champion Wade van Niekerk by a tenth of a second to the finish line in the men's 100-meter final in 10 seconds flat. Here's a look at the race as well as reactions from the two stars.
Everybody together there, and a great start by Wade van Niekerk. Emilie Rasmus is going as well. Gift Leotlela, the three of them out front. It's Emilie Rasmus, Leotlela, van Niekerk. Leotlela takes it. Gift Leotlela wins this race ahead of Wade van Niekerk. Van Niekerk didn't quite look as flowing as he normally does. Had a lot of competition from the start there from Emilie Rasmus. And then Gift Leotlela coming through on his outside and taking the win here.
It feels amazing to actually be able to run against the world record holder. It's amazing.
In your head, you must have thought that over 100 meters, you've got him or not?
Oh, I wouldn't know, because in 100 meters, anyone can take it, because it's a short dash. So if you make one mistake, then it's gone.
Listen, we've been watching all the races here, and it just seems like the track is very fast. It's personal best after personal best. Just how fast is this track?
It's very fast. I used to run here when I was still in my school, and it's very fast. And the conditions tonight are also perfect.
Yeah, it was tough. I had to fight. I think it's been quite a while since I had to fight to the finish line. But it's good competition. I've said it over and over again that South Africa's got a massive generation coming through now. And I'm just blessed and excited to be part of it.
Speaking of that massive generation, where do you want to feature in the generation of speedsters, particularly over the 100 meters?
Well, it's no secret that I love the 100 meters. So today's quite a good indication.
We spoke with Tanya Ans a little bit earlier. She basically said two things. A, it's still very early in your season. And B, that call about the 200 and 400 worlds still needs to be made much later in the year?
Yeah, it's really a great desire of mine to compete in all three events. So I'd love to have that opportunity soon, to have that blessing to compete in all three events. And yeah, I think only time can tell. Excuse the pun, I mean, time's on the track and then times that we're waiting on the hard work and patience, obviously.
You were on the track here a little bit earlier. You kicked off the event here, receiving that award on your home track. Just take us through what that felt like and the awards that you were steadily amassing in your life.
Yeah, I've always said it. It's really a massive honor and blessing to represent my country, represent Bloem, represent Cape Town, represent wherever. To me, I'm just really glad to be able to do what I'm doing right now. But it's 2017 now. We need to work hard and try and follow through to where we left off last year.
Just one quick question, 43.03. Do you feel like you'll be a threat to that time in 2017?
I mean, I'm only 24 years old, so why not?
I love his closing words. That plaque received, by the way, from Alex Kosana, the head of ASA, was from the IAAF for breaking the world record. It's to commemorate that he is the person who's holding the 400-meter men's world record of 43.03 seconds. That's why we leave it with the sport. Up next, it's time for the weather.
Hi there, welcome from the weather desk. Now, the main focus again is yet on the tropical cyclone that just passed through, so it doesn't really exist anymore. You can see from the satellite image, it's not so well defined anymore. It's not as round. You can't even see the eye of the storm anymore, so it has dissipated. It has actually been blown into oblivion, but there's lots and lots of rainfall following that along the Madagascar interior, so please still be on the lookout and be extra careful. I'll just move over to this side. Take a look at Madagascar. Yeah, you can see the pressure lines there. The isobars are indicating possibilities of strong rainfall coming up along those parts and going all the way towards the southern parts. Now, the concentration of rainfall is now along the southern part of Madagascar, so take all necessary precautions if you are along Madagascar. In terms of here in South Africa and mainland continent, the African continent looks like there'll be more rainfall towards the northern interior for Tanzania, Malawi, as well as some parts of the southern interior of Angola. And South African Weather Service again warns of possibilities hot and dry conditions towards the Western Cape province. That could lead to veld fire. So please just take all necessary precautions along those parts. And you can see temperatures confirmed as well. They're quite high up. Springbok at 35 degrees. It's going to be sunny. It's going to be really hot along that western interior. But a bit of showers are expected along the eastern coastline towards KwaZulu-Natal, as well as over much of the Mozambican coast. Pretoria in South Africa is at a maximum of 30 degrees. Quite a hot day today. The rest of the weekend, in fact, is going to be quite warm across South Africa. Not much rainfall is expected. And then again, clear conditions for some parts of Zimbabwe, as well as over much of Botswana. But a bit of rain is coming for the northern parts of Botswana, going towards the west, for places such as Khansi, as well as over Kanye, those regions. Maun, you should expect up to 60% chance of rain. And then Central Africa, well, a bit of rain for Yaoundé, as well as over Banjul. Temperatures are still very high along those parts. Addis Ababa, much cooler, though, at 26, but Kampala and places such as Bujumbura in Burundi, those are much cooler at maximums of about 23 degrees. Kigali is at 27, Nyeri also upper 20s are expected there. And then again, no chance of rainfall expected for Algeria. Just clear conditions along those parts. Yeah, well, Sahara Desert, quite hot, quite dry, nothing happening there. I mean, the most excitement you'll get is there over the northern parts of Libya, where you see 30% chance of rainfall. So maybe that could come along. Yeah, so they're going through their winter, end of winter, and you'll see some of the temperatures already going up. Cairo, 25, and Baghdad around 18 degrees. Damascus is at 24, and Tripoli around 16. So those will remain like that, upper teens rather, and lower 20s, maybe for the next couple of weeks. But then the hot and dry conditions are coming back again. Bamako, very hot, 39. Niamey, 41 degrees. And N'Djamena also along those upper 30s. Temperatures along those parts, yes, are getting hotter and hotter. And then along the coast, a bit of rainfall coming in. So the Harmattan season is sort of going away. That's the dry period in places such as Ghana, as well as over much of Cote d'Ivoire. So now you're seeing a bit of rainfall returning. So it's getting a lot better along those parts. That's where I leave it for the weather, but there'll be more later, so stay tuned.
what it is. It's the final hour here on the Newsroom. It's 1100 hours Central Africa time. Jumbo Africa. I'm Elvis Preslin.
And I'm Kendall Makamati.
We will be with you until 12 o'clock. Now, today we focus on the Constitutional Court. It wants to an update on the social grant payment contract. And what it wants to know is what will happen as from the 1st of April, Kendall.
Yeah, no, that's exactly why we're asking our viewers, should the Constitutional Court approve the new SASA CPS contract?
That's the question we pose to you. You can let us know on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. Let's take a look at some of those comments that you've been sending through to us. Where's the comments? There we go.
Ali Emmanuel says, SABC Newsroom, my wife and I depend on our pension. We live in an old age home, I suppose. How do we pay our bills?
That's the question, Ali, exactly. If you don't get that payment on the first, Ruth says, let's hope that the court will think for the people first on Monday. Hashtag SASA, hashtag CPS.
Lechasa weighs in with Newsroom, hashtag CPS contract. Let the Concord do the ruling, but we're going to have grannies casualty. They're going to collapse. Aish, I feel shame for them.
These are some of your comments. You can keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But we're also running a poll today, and that is on the back of the minister firing and derailing the entire board, Kendall.
Yes, no, phenomenal stuff. Unbelievable that has happened so fast. Quite a lot been happening in the last 7 days or so.
Well, there at PRASA, it's, just before, the week before they fired the CEO, and now the entire board is gone. So we're asking you, are you perhaps suspicious of the shenanigans that's currently playing out at PRASA? It sounds like a soap opera. 74 votes in, Kendall.
85% say yes, they're definitely suspicious of what's going on at PRASA, whereas 15% say no, nothing wrong with everything that's going on at PRASA.
I'd like to get your thoughts. You've got a couple of hours, 20 hours still to go to vote. So do that and also post us a comment. But right now, time to get down to business. Let's take a look at your headlines. Social Development Minister Batabile Dlamini has instructed her department and SASA to provide the necessary information as requested by the Constitutional Court. Passenger Rail Agency Board Chairperson Popo Molefe says that he will legally challenge the Transport Minister Dipuo Peters' decision to dissolve the PRASA board. And the airports company South Africa, AXA, has replaced the security guards who were on duty during Tuesday's robbery at OR Tambo International Airport as a precautionary measure. That's what's coming up in your news. But first, let's find out from Kendall what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, those security guards that have been placed on whatever special leave or whatever, I hope they've been told not to leave town either.
Well, hopefully they won't be flying out soon.
Exactly. Let's hope not. Let's hope not. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
A bit of bounce again from Morkel. Williamson's running hard, hoping to get 2, and he should get back safely.
Day 2 of the first test between New Zealand and South Africa, and the hosts are building a solid first innings in response to the Proteas 308 all out.
But New Zealand have got through to the end of the day at 177 for 3. Another really good knock from Kane Williamson. He lives to fight tomorrow, as will Jedin Patel.
Free kick for Zambia. Zambia takes one, opportunity goal!
In the first semi-final of the AFCON Under-20, Amajita lose to host Zambia in the second half of extra time by a single goal, 2-0.
Intense pressure now on the Paris Saint-Germain defence. It's Neymar trying to feed it through. It's a stretch and it's in. And I can't remember the last time I saw something like this. Extraordinary scenes at the Nou Camp. Sergio Roberto, the substitute, is the hero of the hour, and it is the greatest Champions League knockout comeback of all time.
It's been 12 hours since I first saw that, and I still can't come up with anything better than that to say. Absolutely brilliant. More about all of that a little later in the Sports Bulletin at 11:35. Don't go anywhere, though, because Elvis has got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. Police Minister Natin Nhleko says that police are searching for the suspects behind the multi-million rand robbery at OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg on Tuesday evening. Now, he was speaking during a visit to the Richmond police station in KwaZulu-Natal Midlands. It's believed a gang pretending to be police officers stole a container as it was due to be transported on an SAA flight. Nhleko says they will leave no stone unturned to apprehend the suspects.
It's an ongoing investigation, and we have got to respect that ongoing investigation. For instance, you wouldn't expect us to tell you how much money was stolen and where that money is being taken to, because that in itself is a subject of investigation on an ongoing basis. So as and when police are ready and completed with their investigations, if there is a need to make public announcements, they will certainly do.
The police are hard at work doing the investigation. There is that allegation that the police were involved. We are told that there was a marked police vehicle and another one with some blue lights. I'm told that 2 of those vehicles are recovered somewhere in Gauteng, and it doesn't support that allegation.
Minister of Transport, Dipuo Peters, plans to appoint an interim board at the Passenger Rail Agency to oversee the affairs of the entity in the next 3 months. The minister yesterday dismissed the current board with immediate effect, saying she acted in the best interests of PRASA and the public. Axed PRASA board chairperson Popo Molefe says they will lodge a court challenge against the transport minister's decision. Molefe says he wants to demonstrate that South Africa is a constitutional democracy and can't let the decision go unchallenged. Parliament's Transport Committee has been holding hearings into recent decisions taken at PRASA. Committee members criticized the board over a range of issues and are set to establish an inquiry into governance challenges at the rail agency. And that's why we're asking you that question in our poll this morning, of course. So what do you make of all the shenanigans at PRASA? You can let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. Now, one of the trade unions at PRASA, the United National Transport Union, says it welcomes the axing of the PRASA board, but it says the transport minister should be fired as well.
Well, the minister has not intervened sufficiently. Not that we believe she should have intervened, but we've had numerous discussions with her, and we've complained, and she's really just sat back and allowed it to deteriorate. And I mean, it's to the detriment of this country.
SABC News also spoke to Judy Nokwedi about the Minister of Transport's decision to dissolve the PRASA board and the accountability of state-owned enterprises. Nokwedi is the Senior Vice President of Arriva SA and also a consummate corporate executive.
The decisiveness with which the Minister has acted in the last few days, I think, augurs well across the board for all forms of decisions that have to be made affecting state-owned entities. I am a former managing director of the South African Public Broadcasting Corporation, and in my tenure at the SABC, we have seen many accusations, allegations, false facts being bandied around. So what I'm hoping, and I think many of us in corporate South Africa are hoping, that this begins a new way of conducting a business in South Africa. Yeah. Because if you don't have rule of law, you cannot have economic growth.
All right. In terms of corporate governance and accountability, so would you say that this is a good decision?
Well, I think when, in the case of PRASA, when there has been so much turmoil at such a vital entity in the lives of South Africans, some would argue that it's that the actions come too late. Some will say, I mean, my own view is it's time, and it's a good thing that the minister's done. I've worked with Minister Dipuo when she was Minister of Energy, and she is a woman of integrity. So certainly in terms of my position in corporate South Africa and the numerous roles I play on boards, this kind of action should take place sooner
Yeah, but do you think the minister could have been under pressure maybe to act in this way? I mean, I was listening to the chairperson of the portfolio committee in Parliament yesterday saying that the board was not necessarily adding value to its mandate, and apparently previously they had even asked the minister to take this decision and dissolve the board.
I suppose one has to look at what is the core issue here. Who has final responsibility? Where does the power vest, or where does the power reside? And so the minister has her role to play in terms of representing the shareholder. The board has a role to play, and then, of course, the executive team. Now, when accountability and integrity is brought into question, then all kinds of pressures come to play. But I think as ordinary South Africans, we have an expectation that the right thing has to be done. So irrespective of where the pressure has come from, the fact of the matter is there have been huge question marks around PRASA, and let's not isolate PRASA. There are many other state-owned entities that are in similar positions, and one is hopeful that decisive action will follow in terms of all other shareholders responsible for state-owned entity boards.
Yeah, and of course with some people saying that the decision that the minister has taken is much about protecting the former CEO, Collins Leswalo. We've also seen the chairperson, Popo Molefe, saying that they will take the matter to court. How important is transparency in the workplace, specifically within the boards?
Well, I think transparency is a key driver around how boards operate. So it's transparency and understanding the role of the board. So the board has incredible responsibilities to ensure that mandates are executed, whether you're acting for your shareholders, whether you're acting for your constituents. So therefore, you know, SCOPA, in terms of one of the arms of Parliament, one is also looking at the role that they play in terms of accountability. So key to how we hold government officials, elected board officials accountable is by nature a byproduct of how transparent our processes. And of course, critical is what information is presented to boards when they sit and adjudicate and inform decisions that they make.
That is why we're asking you that question on our poll this morning, which we are conducting. Asking you, are you suspicious of the shenanigans at PRASA? That's the question. 74 votes in. 85% of you are saying across the continent, yes, we are suspicious of the shenanigans at PRASA. Only 15% are saying no. I wonder who those 15%, who they are, where they're from. Well, we need to look a little bit deeper into that one. Developing story now. 9 people have been rushed to hospital after they were shot at with live ammunition in Reiche Park, east of Johannesburg. Reiche Park residents went on the rampage this morning, burning tires and blockading roads with rocks. They are protesting over what they say is poor service delivery in the area. It is understood that the residents went on the rampage this morning and attempted to burn the house of a local councillor. We'll try and keep you abreast of that story and bring you an update on that a little bit later. Economic empowerment by women for women, one of the strong themes running through the Africa for Africa Women's Conference in Port Elizabeth. The targeted sectors are textile, agriculture, hospitality and financial sustainability. The conference aims to put resolutions in place that will empower women in Africa.
Working towards the United Nations Vision 2063, the conference will better equip women in understanding policies to empower them to capitalize on the opportunities within it. Tapping into the economy and finding financial backing are 2 big challenges women entrepreneurs face.
But the only hindrance is the issue of finance. You know, it is so difficult for a woman to go out there and borrow money. The first thing that the bank will ask you to be about collateral. You know, as you know, most of us married women, we treasure being married. But it's not that our men, they always support us. They always want to put us back into managing a house, because that's where they think we are best known of, you know, handling. Nothing else. You go in the corporate world. There are few women who are in the corporate world, you know, but that does not mean that we can't have more women going out there. But all what I'm trying to say is women need to be encouraged.
Several successful mechanisms are in place in South Africa to assist emerging women business owners, but it is not perfect yet.
I think that, one of the things that government has done well is making sure that, we've got these financial institutions, if I would call them, your NEFs and all of that, across the country, where our people, for the first time, get an opportunity to know that if I want to open a business, I've got somewhere to go. But what we're not doing right is you look at their requirements, for instance, especially this time. Most young women that I speak to always say, well, they're there, but I don't qualify for 90% of the things that are required for me in order for me to get finance. I've got this great business idea and all of that, and I see that I can make it happen in my own community, but I'm unable to access funding because of the requirements that are there in order for me to be able to get into there.
The conference is an idea-sharing platform. The Seychelles is a success story of women empowerment. 80% of the country's SMMEs are owned by women.
One of the first things I usually tell them is learn to work together, learn to respect each other, and learn to trust. We have a big problem where competition is concerned. We don't like competition, we don't like to share ideas. Knowledge should be shared. When you share ideas, you learn.
The conference is also using smaller commissions to address many of the questions directly. Ifwe Poti, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
The African Peer Review Mechanism celebrates its 14th anniversary today. Former President Thabo Mbeki and the co-initiator of the organization is expected to give a keynote speech. Its CEO, Professor Eddie Maloka, believes the institution is still relevant.
He's been in the job for a year, and APRM CEO Professor Eddie Maloka maintains the review mechanism must remain voluntary, despite criticism that it lacks teeth when member states fail to implement recommendations. Maloka maintains sanctions are not an option.
It's not in the philosophy of APRM to punish. It's not supposed to punish. It's not intended to punish or to shame a country. If a country has committed itself to certain engagements and there's no movement there, we have the responsibility as the Secretariat and working together with the panel to encourage that country. Especially some of the countries that have been members for long but are not taking up the reviews.
While the review mechanism marks its 14th anniversary, only 36 countries are signed up and 20 have been reviewed so far. This year, there will be 7 reviews, including a second review of Nigeria. Maloka says South Africa should urgently start its second review post the 2007 report.
We are aware that they are completing an assessment of how they implemented the first review, and they will be beginning a process now of the self-assessment. We are quite keen to see South Africa joining Kenya, also and Nigeria. Now Uganda is also going, Mozambique. These countries that will be doing, and it's going to happen soon. And it will re-energize South Africans again, like it did way back there. I think it was in 2007.
Optimistic that more African states will join the peer review mechanism. Aldrin Simpier, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, you heard the former president, Thabo Mbeki, a little bit earlier, providing you that speech coming live there. Meanwhile, the Defence Minister, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, will lay a wreath in honor of South African troops that have died in combat in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Since deployment in 2013 under the auspices of the United Nations, 15 soldiers have been killed. Yesterday, on International Women's Day, the minister conducted an overnight visit in Goma, visiting female troops there in the DRC. Close to 300 female soldiers are in eastern DRC.
She's one of the many patriots serving her country on foreign soil. 32-year-old Major Zanele Vayeke, the only female pilot deployed to Goma. She's shattered stereotypes in a traditionally male-dominant industry.
As women, it's more challenging for us to be out here in this environment. As a woman, you have to fight every day because, firstly, men don't want to accept and understand that we as women are here and are here to stay. Being a soldier comes first, and then they tell you women come second. So you have to try and adjust to being a soldier and being a woman at the same time.
Those challenges, the reason for the minister's first stop, she provided a platform for them to speak out about issues affecting them in operational areas and find solutions.
I don't know if the minister can help us with those arrangements for the sanitary waste to be disposed somewhere, because we don't have any process to dispose them.
And the minister gave reassurance that their concerns will be addressed.
I think with time, things will improve. I mean, from the report I received earlier on, there are certain things, indeed, there are areas where we've improved, but there are areas where we are still lacking. And it helps when you talk, when you raise these matters, because then we are able to correct some of these.
Since South Africa started deploying troops in the DRC in 2003, 15 have died in combat. A hostile environment, but the commitment of women like Major Zanele Vayeke remains unwavering. SANDF members like Major Zanele Vayeke are critical to the maintenance of peace and stability in the DRC, while she is one of many women at the sharp end of peacekeeping deployment. The Defence Minister will also visit strife-torn North Kivu to engage other women also in the trenches. Criselda Lewis, SABC News, Goma in the DRC.
That's Criselda Lewis, flying high. Now back home, police continue with their crackdown on illegal miners in Benoni on Gauteng's East Rand. This comes after 14 bodies were found earlier this week. Authorities raided an informal settlement yesterday near an abandoned mine and seized mining equipment.
The site of the gruesome discovery on Sunday. 6 bodies dumped near a railway line. On Monday, another 8 were also found at this bridge close to the first scene. It's understood they were victims of an ongoing turf war. This informal settlement on the doorstep of the crime scene raided. The links to illegal mining evident. But Zamazamas are not going down without a fight. But they were cornered. The mining operation also shut down and the shacks demolished. Illegal miners forced out. Well, it's seemingly the end of this illegal mining operation, at least for now. This informal settlement completely destroyed, but Zamazamas insist they'll continue digging for gold, risking life and limb. Among the items confiscated, firearms, explosives and detonators. But the killings earlier this week remain shrouded in mystery, the scale unprecedented. At this point, there are more questions than answers. Mangoba Mchunu, SABC News, Benoni.
63 mentally ill patients have so far been moved to the Solomon Sticks Marewa Memorial Hospital in Selby in Johannesburg after the call by the Selby Park Hospital was called. Now, this follows the death of more than 100 psychiatric patients last year after they were transferred from Life Healthcare Isidameni to several unlicensed NGOs in the province.
This program will not be rushed. It would actually be done in the best interest of patients.
A painstaking process, transferring over 700 patients from the remaining NGOs. But even more challenging, tracking down relatives. Over 60 patients have been transferred here, one of the largest private hospitals in the country. It accommodates over 600. Within this facility, a psychiatric unit. It's one of 3 earmarked to accommodate patients. It's costing government almost 500 rand per patient per day.
We have moved 63 patients so far. And I've also indicated that with the experience that we now have and the capacity, especially in the 2 facilities that we have started with, and the additional doctors that we've been able to recruit, we believe we'll be able to move more patients.
Since the Life Esidimeni crisis, the director, HOD, and Mental Health Review Board chairperson were suspended. 5 officials have been DC'd. The Tshwane chief director has been placed on a precautionary transfer. And a plea from officials for families to come forward. Those still searching for loved ones can contact Gauteng's Health on the following numbers: 011 564 2235 or send an SMS to 082 809 0131. Julian Pillay, SABC News, Selby.
There may be associated problem with the arteries of the heart in patients with hypertensive heart disease, and in some instances it's just pure the muscle disease problem. The statistics show us that half the population of individuals with high blood pressure are not even aware that they've got high blood pressure.
There's the amount of salt we eat, because there's a big influence on our blood pressure levels. So using less salt when you're cooking, less salty spices when you're cooking, not adding salt at the table, but rather using other spices and herbs to flavor your food. And then of course how much sugar you eat is also very important.
If you start becoming uncomfortable, or where you feel that your effort tolerance is becoming less, you can't lie flat, you run short of breath, you start swelling in the legs and so on, it's high time that one should consult a doctor.
Join Health Talk every Saturday for all your health news. The fossil hominid sites at Sterkfontein Caves, known as Cradle of Humankind, were declared a World Heritage Site on the 2nd of December 1999. The Cradle of Humankind covers an area of over 47,000 hectares of privately owned land northwest of Johannesburg. Most of the site is on dolomite, a rock type which is slightly soluble in water. There are currently over 200 caves on the site and 13 fossil sites. We know that Australopithecus africanus were present in the cradle from about 2 to 4 million years ago. It is generally known that hominids are close relatives of human ancestors.
More than 300,000 children in Somalia may starve to death if humanitarian aid does not reach them fast. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned that Somalia is teetering on the brink of famine and called on donors to provide urgent assistance to end their suffering. Close to 1,000 people have died in the country following an outbreak of cholera. Sarah Kamani reports. Well, it seems like we haven't got that report. Meanwhile, earlier, as we indicated, the Defence Minister, Nosovima Pisang-Nakula, will lay a wreath in honour of South African troops that have died in combat in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, since deployment in 2013, under the auspices of the United Nations, 15 soldiers have been killed. Griselda Lewis is in Goma with the DRC, with the Minister there. Let's cross to her live. Very good morning to you, Griselda.
Well, a very good morning to you, Albus. Well, this is the second day of the Minister of Defence's visit. And certainly what we can say from what we've seen yesterday is that her first point of call was, of course, to visit female troops here in Goma. And, what we really saw the minister do there is really engage with them on what some of their challenges were in her trying to find sustainable solutions to the challenges that they brought to her. So the Minister of Defence has been in this particular area, of course, visiting various missions where the South African troops are deployed under the auspices of the United Nations. And on day 2, this is where we are today, where the minister will also do a visit as well and speak to some of the troops here as well. We were scheduled to fly to Beni, which is in North Kivu, but unfortunately due to weather conditions that has had to be cancelled. But the minister is continuing on various paths to go to these various missions where the South African troops are, just to get a sense of what a deployment means for them here, where perhaps the minister's office will be able to assist some of them and basically gauge what some of their challenges are. So we'll chat to the minister in just a short while, but I think what is most crucial also is that the minister was also scheduled to lay a wreath. You recall since the deployment of South African troops since 2013, 15 soldiers have died in the line of duty, and the minister was scheduled to lay that wreath in honour of these fallen heroes. Unfortunately, that did not take place, but we'll engage with the minister, of course, relating to that as well. Let's join the Minister now of Defence, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. Minister, thank you very much for your time. It's been a very busy 2 days. We've seen you go to various of these missions where the South African troops are deployed. What sense did you get? Yesterday, we managed to sit in on one of those one-on-one sessions that you were having with South African troops. What sense are you getting about, what some of the successes and still challenges are for them in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in particular in Goma?
I think for me, the most important of them all is an observation that the deep, deep sense of commitment by our men and women to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, to the mission that has been assigned to them. I think for me that it stands out. It comes out that in spite of the enormous challenges they have, in spite of the difficulties you encounter in a mission area, but they still remain very committed to flying the South African flag. And that for me is touching, very moving. It is what South Africa is all about. It is what the people of South Africa struggled for. That whatever mission given, assigned to you, that you should commit, dedicate, and remain loyal to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. We are here because we support, as a South African National Defence Force, our foreign policy objectives. We are here because the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo continue to encounter problems. You'll recall that this particular team, which is here now, is a team which was fielded in 2013, decision taken by heads of state that we need to have an FIB, a Force Intervention Brigade. And this is the 4th team now because we rotate on a yearly basis, which is here. We are now in Sake, which is our logistical headquarters, support base. This is where you have South Africans, you have Tanzanians, you have Malawians. They are all together in this area. And of course, 2/3 of our soldiers are not here, and which is very unfortunate because the plan was to go to Beni, which is where the heat is, which is where our people are currently. And just to get in there and get an understanding from them what the challenges are right there in that triangle. Well, you also know that we lost a soldier here last year. And of course, we've lost soldiers from other countries as well. And the idea was also to go and lay a wreath, but also to interact with the civilians themselves. Remember, the main task here is to protect the civilians, ordinary, innocent men and women and children of this country who continue to be victimized and being attacked by the rebel groups. So
We came in to neutralize the negative forces, but it's important that you interact with the civilians and get to know from them whether the kind of relationship which we want to have with them, we do have. Whether we do provide the kind of protection we are meant to protect, to offer to them. Whether we engage with them. When you get into an area as soldiers, as you see them, one of the things you do is to strike a relationship with the community there through different projects, whether we do have that kind of partnership, we do have those kinds of projects, and whether in fact they are receptive to our own conduct, our own behavior. Remember, Griselda, that we also have the 1325 resolution of the United Nations. Yeah. One of the critical challenges which we have is to continuously engage with our members about observing that particular resolution. And you're not going to be able to do it from South Africa. You have to make sure that you check all the time from the commanders here, from the deputy head of the brigade, of the FIB, whether in fact our people are observing this resolution 1325.
Minister, before we get to that resolution, I also want to talk about, very briefly, what was quite striking to the eyes on your arrival on International Women's Day. You did engage with women as well. These are women, when you look at them, strong, women who I guess can, take on their male counterparts at any given time. Listening to those women, bringing some of their concerns to you, what happens? Because I guess in the areas that we were scheduled to visit today in North Kivu, you were perhaps going to come across similar concerns from women who are in the front line of battle. What do you do with these concerns then that are raised not just by women, I guess, but also men who are serving South Africa on foreign soil?
Griselda, the one thing which stands out for me is the fact that we have scores of women who are ready to go to the front line. However, what came across on this particular mission, which obviously I'm concerned about, which I will be engaging with the Chief of the South African National Defence Force and the rest of the Military Command Council on, is that whereas we do make demands that all soldiers, men and women, should go to the front, practically here we have had, unfortunately, a particular challenge, very unique challenge, which has affected some of the women. But of course, I'm told it's not just some of the women, but the majority of people who are affected by that challenge are women. You do have some men as well who were obviously traumatized by the experience. Remember, the terrain where we are particularly deployed is it's deep in the jungle. And when you hear them explaining the tactical maneuvers, the tactical movement of the troops, you realize that, yes, it must have been very difficult for the women who were part of that grouping. So what is important here is that, much as on the side of policy, I determine policy, and I must monitor the execution of that policy. So I must be able to discuss with the generals and say, look, in view of the following challenges which were encountered by this particular group, at the point of rotation, which is in May, right, we need to have now that in mind, that the weather conditions in that particular area, the terrain in that particular area is such that a trip which we could have done in a day, they've had to do it in 3-4 days. Just walking in the bush because there are no roads in there. So the women were walking, and of course you have to carry your own luggage. So those sorts of things. But of course there's that time of the month for women as well. I mean, women were very honest about it, that look, there's that time of the month which comes, and when you are walking all the way with troops, with men, surrounded by men from the entire FIB, you being in the center, walking in a strict line, there are certain things which become very difficult for you as a woman to do. So I've had to absorb that with the sole intention of raising these matters with the generals, so that as they deploy, we take cognizance of those peculiar challenges.
But they've not been left, I guess, unheard or without any appreciation. Just last night, we saw you for the very first time handing out certificates of appreciation to women for taking up this particular role. And what was striking, I guess, is as some went to render poems, these are women who have managed to break through that barrier of the patriarchal line and also managed to I guess, stand up for themselves in very, very difficult terrain. Why did you decide for the very first time to hand out those certificates of appreciation?
For me, it's just to appreciate in the first instance that they could agree to take this kind of deployment. And by the way, in spite of the challenges which we've alluded to earlier on, they've been tried and tested in combat, in battle, in the very area where the attacks are happening right now, in the Beni area. So it's not as though when they encounter these kinds of problems, they withdrew, because there's no way of withdrawing. You continue to move forward and you continue to engage with the enemy. And for me, these are men and women who've left their families behind. Some of them have children, some of them have partners, some of them have parents, and they are very young, and I'm sure you saw the numbers of women. In the majority of women who are here are very, very young, in their 19s, 20s, etc. So, very fragile, but stilled women in battle, in combat. So I think that I'm quite excited about that. In spite of the challenges, there are women who have been able to pull through in the ranks, in the systems of the South African National Defence Force. And when you talk to these generals and colonels here, they will tell you that indeed they are fighters. And what we saw last night, where this group of women laid back, out of uniform, talking as women and behaving as girls and doing girl talk together with me. And I'm very happy. And I therefore have to express a word of appreciation to them, affirm them all the time that, look, in spite of the challenges you've come across, you still are very good, well-tested soldiers.
Minister, just two last questions before we run out of time. On the UN resolution, I saw yesterday you were quite firm as well and did indicate before you left the podium that you would not leave the podium without reminding the South African troops why they are deployed here. Of course, you can't run away from some of the negative press that there has been in terms of the conduct of the South African troops.
What is important, though, Griselda, is that where there's been wrongdoing, we've acted decisively. In September 2015, you'll recall that we have a biggish group, a sizable number of young people who decided to leave a base and went to a place where they could really enjoy themselves. And of course, we withdrew them because indeed they endangered the lives of other members who are in the area here. We withdrew them, took them to South Africa, and of course they've since been dismissed by the South African National Defence Force, precisely because our people move into the area here solely for purposes of protecting vulnerable women and children. And if they are going to be the first ones now to engage in activities which compromise, right, those communities, then we simply withdraw the people. And I'm quite happy that we've took such decisive action against them. And of course, continuously we have to remind them. One thing, Griselda, which we must always emphasize, there is no normal love relationship here. If a soldier moves into an area, meets a woman who he is supposed to provide protection to, and decides to have a relationship with that woman, in terms of 1325, that is sexual abuse. It is tantamount to raping that woman, even if it was consensual, because you are taking a person who is vulnerable, who is a victim, who looks up to you for protection, and you engage in sexual activity with that person. Immediately, in terms of that resolution, that is sexual abuse and is tantamount to a rape of this particular woman. So you have to emphasize that to the soldiers all the time. Not that before they come here, they did not receive that kind of orientation or education. They were. But you have to remind them that here you are not engaging in sexual acts with
civilians because you are here to protect them. Don't take advantage of people who are vulnerable. Don't take advantage of people who look up to you as this person who's come to protect them.
Minister, we're really running out of time. I have to ask, with regard to the postponement of the elections in the Democratic Republic of Congo, South Africa has been very instrumental trying to restore peace and stability. And in particular, if we look at Beni in North Kivu at this point, which is considered to nicknamed the Death Triangle. And, you know, what are the hopes, I guess, on your part, given that South Africa has got troops here, of course, under the auspices of the United Nations, with regard to the elections and already instability that we've seen as a result of the postponement?
You know, Christella, the one thing which makes me happy about this trip is that it happens at a time when we are preparing to go to the summit of heads of state of SADC, where at least I'll be able to brief the Commander-in-Chief of the South African National Defence Force about some of the pertinent challenges which our people have come across. One of those, when we're receiving the reports, for instance, yesterday, is that you have areas in the east here where the very rebels are the ones who are conducting voter registration. Okay? That should say something about the dynamics of the political environment in this part of the country. You have, for instance, whereas we had completely neutralized M23 2 years ago, we now see a regrouping of some elements of M23. We have groupings which clearly have taken a decision that they are going to come out and attack the FIB, precisely because of the manner in which the FIB has conducted itself in this area. Remember, there's a lot of illicit economy which is going on here. There's a lot of looting of the resources of the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And some people are very uncomfortable about that. So some of the reports at times you read have to do with the fact that people are pushing a particular narrative, that you don't need the FIB there, you don't need South Africans there, because South Africans and the rest of their counterparts who are in here have been doing a hell of a good job. So I'm just saying the postponement of the elections obviously does have an impact on the work which we are doing. But as far as I'm concerned, whether the elections are held today or tomorrow in the Democratic Republic of Congo, but the challenge remains of neutralizing the negative forces in this part of the country. And for me, I'm not sure if these elections will come with completely eradicating the presence of negative forces.
Minister, unfortunately, I'm really over time. Thank you very much for your time. The Minister of Defense, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, there obviously, she will continue just chatting to some of the troops here at the Sake base. And we'll continue to monitor that from here. We'll certainly try and see if we can cross to you much later on as the Minister continues to engage with troops here at the Sake base. But for now, we'll hand over to the studio. I guess it's news time, and we'll cross to you a bit later on.
Thank you, Griselda. That was Griselda in Goma in the DRC, with the minister, of course, looking at after the troops there, and of course the issues that is confronting them rather in the DRC. Right now, it's time to take a look at your weather forecast.
This story is about what happens when we put our differences aside and we come together as a human race.
Salt makes its way out of the kitchen into the art studio.
Normally, you know, salt is for food and stuff, but then here's salt.
The past couple of months, I've grown so much, and I'm just ready to impart what I've learned to the next Miss South Africa. I wasn't expecting this. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm feeling so overwhelmed.
For your weekly dose of entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
So from Port Elizabeth, I eventually left there, joined the circus, as you know, and travelled. I was a singer, I was a race car driver, and I wanted to see what my chances were in America. So I started off with MTV, and I started producing music, because I was in the music business, you know. So I started producing musical acts with Black Sabbath, Guns N' Roses, Motorhead, and I became Wine, Women and Song. That was my life in Hollywood.
A pioneer, a Crystal Award recipient, Basil Gold is a force to be reckoned with. For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.